Sure. Like the face of a sunflower?
Where are the spirals?
You see this math everywhere.
Welcome back to the Gnostic Informant, and you're about to attain true gnosis. And I'm working on a video right now for Easter that I'm almost finished with. But I figured this is a perfect time to jump on here and do a debate type of call in, whatever it is, because no one ever wants to debate the idea that Easter is pagan. It's either Christmas, like people debate that, like how much is Sol Invictus involved and all this other stuff, and the birth of Harpocrates, the winter solstice, all that stuff. There's all this. People are pretty aware of that debate, but Easter, for some reason, Easter's off limits. No, that's totally Christian. There's no pagan influence. We know Jesus went down for Passover, and that's when he got crucified. We know that's what happened. And my question is, how do we know that? Because in Paul's letters, in all of Paul's epistles, he never says anything about Passover, about Jesus. He even talks about the night Jesus got handed over in Corinthians. Perfect time, perfect opportunity for him to say the night he was handed over on that Passover meal. But he doesn't say that. We don't have anything about Passover until the Gospels, which are all after 70. So the question is the death of Jesus placed strategically at a time of the year to make him the Passover lamb, but not only make him the Passover lamb, to sort of coincide with other traditions that are floating around the Mediterranean. There are countless festivals that were popular at this time. The Anthesteria festival, which would be early March or early spring, maybe not like spring equinox proper, maybe a little before that. I think the month that it would take place in would be like our February through March, so like February 15th to March 15th. But it is a spring resurrection festival of the dead for Dionysus in the Attica region, so Athens and Eleusis. But then there's another festival that they have right after that called the City Dionysia, or the Great Dionysia. And if you watch my videos, you might be thinking to yourself, another Dionysia? Didn't you say in your Christmas video that the Dionysia was celebrated right at the time of the winter solstice? Yes, there's two of them, the greater and the lesser. The lesser's in the wintertime, the greater's in the spring, and they actually both coincide. Interestingly enough, the greater and lesser Dionysia coincides perfectly with Easter and Christmas. They both straddle the winter solstice and spring equinox. And I think, and by the way, if you read like the peer-reviewed papers on the calculation theory for the birthday of December 25th, the equinox and the solstice was a huge interpreting deal, or a huge factor, I should say, into how Jesus gets placed at December 25th. There was like a cosmic alignment going on. They wanted John the Baptist's birth to be at the summer solstice. They wanted Jesus' death to be right around the spring equinox, and they wanted his birth to be. There's a cosmic alignment around the winter solstice. But that's a pagan idea. That idea of cosmic alignments with the stars and the moon and the solstices, that's a pagan idea. That's a deeply pagan idea. And you can even find Christian authors in the 1st and 2nd, 3rd century, not first, but the earliest writings we have, talking about how we don't do celebrations of we don't have festivals. We don't do celebrations of birthdays. We don't watch the stars and all that stuff. That's what pagans do. But then the Christians start doing this. So yes, for some reason, Easter's off limits when this year. It's almost like scoffed at, like laughed at, like this would be flat Earth type shit. But I'm going to present you some really, in my opinion, strong evidence that there's a case to be made that the whole entire Easter festival itself is reapplying pagan culture into Christianity. So it doesn't mean like Jesus didn't exist, or that he didn't die, or didn't resurrect, or I'm sorry, didn't get crucified. A slip of the tongue. He didn't resurrect. Yeah, of course he did. Um, it doesn't mean that isn't a guy, and like maybe he existed, maybe he didn't. I'm not even trying to ask that question right now. I don't even care about that question. The question is, do we really know that this dude went down for Passover? And maybe he did. Maybe that is what happened. That he did go down for Passover. We still have to ask the question: are they drawing, for example, the 3-day death and resurrection motif? Turns out you find that in some pagan sources. It goes back to the descent of Ishtar, which was well known all the way up until the Book of Esther is written, and you have a 3-day sequence in the Septuagint version. So that's the stories. The stories are still known, even though they're very ancient. You also have the Kisu festival. You know what? Let me play a clip from my video where I cite my sources. There's a French Assyriologist named Arnaud, and he talks about the festival called Kisu, dedicated to Dagon and the 70 gods under Dagon. And this was a dying and rising festival of springtime called Kisu. So let me share my screen, and let's skip up to this part right here. And I have it ready to go. Let's see, Kisu, or it's in the Zukru. Yeah, it's Zukru and Kisu. They're both spring. But here we go.
Let's see how to convert a
Stupid ads. And by the way, I will be opening up the chat, or people to join. Super chat, skip the line. I'll read you right away. Obviously, I do that every time. All right, I'm going to play this and we're going to talk about it.
The Akitu festival endured for many centuries beyond Babylon, with celebrations in places like Palmyra and Emesa and Syria, and even being introduced to Italy by the Roman Emperor Elagabalus in the 3rd century of the Common Era. During the Severan dynasty, Eastern religious influence began to take its course throughout the Roman Empire. Another ancient festival celebrated at the spring equinox is the Zukru festival of the Assyrians. The Assyrians have 2 major festivals celebrated at opposite times of the year. The Kisu festival, celebrated at the same time as the Hebrew Sukkot.
I was actually wrong about this. The Kisu festival is not a fixed festival. They're usually both spring. So from what I just recently found out, that the Zukru happened every couple of years or something like that. The Kisu was a yearly event, and they often were like right side by side. They actually like connected them. So this Kisu is not in the fall. That was incorrect, but I just wanted to correct myself there. So let's keep going.
The fall equinox, and the Zukru festival was celebrated on the same day as Passover, the 14th of Nisan, which is the 14th day of the new year, the spring equinox. These 2 equinox festivals are the largest and most documented in the Assyrian tablets dug up at Nineveh. Arnaud Daniel, famous Assyriologist who has written extensively on this subject, has proposed that these festivals are a commemoration of the gods and goddesses' descent to the underworld and later resurrection.
Now that right there, we got this French Assyriologist. By the way, I had to read his stuff through ChatGPT because it was in French, but his stuff is just fire. I will say this: is he relating the scholarly consensus? No, but there is a lot of support behind what he's saying about these festivals. The language is a strong argument. You're about to see it right now, actually, what I'm talking about.
The rite of laying down the statue of Ninkur was a symbolic gesture of the burial of the goddess. The presence of the mourning woman figures and rites of mourning also gives much credence to this theory as well. At the Zukru festival at Nineveh, sacred to the god Dagon, which, according to the tablets found at Nineveh, was celebrated on, drumroll please, the 14th day of Nisan, where the text actually.
And that, if anyone doesn't know, Nisan 14 is the day that Jesus gets crucified. That's Passover. That's the day of That's literally tomorrow, or I'm sorry, in Sunday. It'd be this Sunday, according to. Well, no, it's based on the Babylonian calendar, so it'd be whenever the Jews have Passover. So, just happened. But anyways, this is the same. We're in the week right now. It doesn't matter. We're getting into the weeds now. But that's Nisan 14, first full month of the new year. Nisan 1 is the new year. Nisan 14 is 14 days, which is the first full moon.
Reads on the 14th day of the new year, which coincides to Nisan 14, which is the same day as the Passover and the same day Jesus was crucified. 70 unblemished lambs were sacrificed for this festival. Unblemished lambs is exactly what the tablets specifically call for, and 70 total, which is a number that anyone who knows about Passover will think I'm lying about, because during the 7-day Passover festival, 7 lambs are slaughtered. The unblemished lamb sacrifice is what is in Deuteronomy. These are the Lord's appointed festivals, the sacred assemblies you are to proclaim at their appointed times. The Lord's Passover begins at twilight on the 14th day of this first month. On the 15th day of that month, the Lord's festival of unleavened bread begins. For 7 days, you must eat bread made without yeast.
Isn't that crazy? By the way, someone said my mic was really low. I turned it up. Is it too loud right now? Let me know if it's too loud now. Thank you, Baron1170, for becoming a member. You are the reason why I can do this the way I do it. So, and thanks again, Grandpa, for the $4.99. I appreciate that. You guys are the best. Just want to make sure. Someone said my mic was low. I turned it up a little bit. Is it too loud now? Let me know. I'll take a zero difference. Huh? Mic is good. Okay. Someone's saying this mic is good. All right. I'm going to play the video and keep. So is this not blowing your mind, guys? That there's literally unblemished lamb stuff going on at this during, and Jesus is the Passover lamb, and this is all pagan, guys. You guys get it? By the way, I'm not even stunned. I haven't scratched the surface yet. I have so many. There's like a dozen of these festivals. Melkart's festival in Phoenicia, the Adonis Fest, the Adonia, which there's a debate on if it happened in the spring or in the summer, and maybe even both. Whatever. And then you have Osiris, Attis, the Hilaria Festival. We're going to get into all that. And then I'm going to have people jump in and debate me if they want to debate me on this. I don't think anyone will. No one ever wants to do it. They just want to just have the Bible says he was crucified on Passover, so it had to be true. And so many, whatever. We'll just keep going.
On the first day, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. For 7 days present a food offering to the Lord. And on the 7th day, hold a sacred assembly and do no work.
On the day you wave the sheaf, you must sacrifice as a burnt offering to the Lord an unblemished lamb without any defect. Moses.
I'm sorry, Moses, but I'm pretty sure that you did not get this command from Yahweh. Here's what the Nineveh tablets say about Zakru on the exact same day and the exact same week. The first offerings of Zakru festival are sacrificed on the 14th of the month, the head of the year.
Sorry about the ad. Yeah, you're right. Maybe I'll just turn the volume down on the video.
As on the 14th day, they offer 70 unblemished lambs provided by the king. For all 70 gods, the 70 lambs are to be sacrificed to each of the 70 gods of Amar. And another text prescribes that 70 doves be distributed between them. You can find the same primary sources that I found from these 2 peer-reviewed articles and 1 book. One is the 70 bowls sacrificed at Sukkot by Noga Ayala Darshan, Department of Hebrew and Semitic Languages at Bar Ilan University, Israel, and the other is the god Dagon in Bronze Age Syria by Louis Feliu.
By the way, we still haven't even got into the Why It's a Dying and Rising festival. Right now I'm only showing you the lamb stuff. It's about to get way more 3-day dying and rising motif going to happen pretty soon in this Kisu festival, not the Zakru. Both, but I did find out both Kisu and Zakru are both spring. However, think about this for a second. Think about how silly it is that we're supposed to believe that Moses was revealed by Yahweh to do these rites. Moses is getting a revelation from Yahweh to sacrifice an unblemished lamb, when at the same time we can find in earlier sources in the Assyrians doing the same. What did Yahweh tell them to do it, or did Yahweh like what the Assyrians were doing and wanted to copy Moses? It makes you go, obviously this is a cultural borrowing, a cultural adaptation by the Hebrews, Israelites, Jews, whatever you want to call them, from the Assyrians, and they were conquered by the Assyrians. So of course they're going to adopt some of their stuff. I mean, they're living in right next to Mesopotamia. They're living in the Near East. So what's more likely? This was revealed, and that just it happens to be revealed, the thing that everyone around them is doing. Think about these things when you're actually reading this stuff. So, it's gonna get here. Should I skip ahead, or is this gonna be important? No, I'll just keep playing this part.
They are the ones who translated these. So not only do we have festivals of Zakru celebrated on the same exact day as Passover, for the same 7-day duration of Passover, but both Passover and Zakru call for the sacrifice of a single unblemished lamb for each god, and one for Yahweh, one for each of the 70 gods of Nineveh. But this also means that Jesus, as the lamb sacrifice, has his origins in a pagan Assyrian religion. The Dagon of the garden is an epithet of Dagon that is venerated at Zakru. This also gives more plausibility to the interpretation by Assyriologist Arnaud Daniel that this festival was one that was related to the death and resurrection of gods of agriculture. Also, just as Passover is deeply linked to the Sukkot and the fall equinox, the Zakru is deeply tied to the Kisu festival.
Again, I was incorrect on that, on this part. It doesn't actually matter though. It doesn't actually doesn't change what I'm about to say here. So I'm wrong about the dating of Kisu. Kisu is also spring. I was confused on, I don't know why. I don't know why I thought it was fall. Maybe I read somewhere else that it was fall, but I found out later they're both spring and they both happen around the same time. So here's what happens at this Kisu. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. At this Kisu, which is in the spring, by the way, not fall, this is what happens.
Seasonal resurrection interpretation for the agricultural gods at the Zakru. The underworld part would be personified by deities such as Suala and Rashab. The Zakru ritual of lying down the statue of Ninkor in the temple of Dagon looks like a sacred marriage rite between the divine couple, similar to Ishtar and Tammuz or Adonis and Venus. Professor Arnaud strengthens his argument for the existence of gods who die and rise by means of the collection of names, as there are theophoric names with the element Yamut, which, according to Professor Arnaud, in principle, may be related to a Syrian word, mot, which means to die. For all these reasons, it is possible to connect the Kisu.
By the way, if you're familiar with Ugaritic mythology, you would know that Mot is the god of death. So that you should know, that shouldn't surprise you, that Yamut is a word that means to die. So there's just something I pointed out for the linguistic nerds out there.
Ritual with some kind of rite related to the commemoration and the remembrance of the marriage of the divine couple, Dagon and Ninkor, which then begs the question, where does the unleavened bread come in? And is this truly special for Israelites and the Exodus? And to this I would say no. Here's why. We have a badly damaged papyrus dating to the year 419 BCE, long after the so-called Exodus, and even long after the Israelites have returned from Babylonian captivity, It's in Aramaic, and it's from Jews living in Jerusalem, writing to the Jews living in Elephantine. It is known by scholars as the Passover Papyrus from Elephantine. The letter states that King Darius II has instructed the Persian satrap Armises to allow the Jewish garrison at Elephantine to observe.
So okay, so you sort of get the point. They're learning about a Passover for the first time ever in 419. That's the first source that ever mentions any Passover, and it's interestingly enough that Darius, it's in the time of Darius, and it's prescribing unleavened bread, which is what the Persians are doing at that time. The Persians have a Nowruz festival at this time. Nowruz, New Year. It's a New Year's festival, and what do they do? They have a table with an egg on it and unleavened bread and a bunch of other dishes that they have. It's like a Passover meal, and you can see this looks like a Persian adaptation into the Israelite religion. Now, I do want to go back to Arnaud's. Well, this is from the book Dagon and the 70. It's a Oxford peer-reviewed book. I don't know how old it is, but anyways, here's the part where he talks about Arnaud. He says the Kisu festival are the most difficult rituals to interpret in the whole of the Emar liturgy. He has supposed that seeing the festival as a commemoration of the god or goddess's descent to the underworld and his later resurrection. The fact of the laying down of Ninkora's symbolic gesture of the burial of the goddess, the presence of mourning women. Think about Jesus at the tomb, the mourning women. This is very specific, guys. This is very specific. Osiris, Nephthys and Isis, Adonis, Persephone and Venus. Attis, the great mother. Like there's always this motif of the mourning woman and the death of the god. Would favor this interpretation with mourning women. Afterwards, okay, so this is what it says. The presence of mourning women would favor this interpretation. Oh, wait, where's the 3-day thing? Why am I missing this? Festivals as a commemoration, the descent and later resurrection. The fact of the laying down was symbolic gesture. Wait. Afterwards, on the 4th day, the god is to make. Am I missing something? Where's the part? Because I know it says for 3 days they mourn. Am I stupid? Where am I not seeing it? Propose the festivals as a commemoration of the god's descent and his later resurrection. The fact of laying down the statue was symbolic gesture of the burial of the goddess. Okay, so I guess we're just assuming that's what he means there. Or is it maybe it's up here? Maybe I'm missing it. Let's see. The beginning of the ritual prescribes the same ceremony, moans and laying down 4 tables on the same day as sacrifice is made. Vegetables are made on this. Okay, here we go. The 2nd day, a sacrifice is made. So this is the beginning of the festival. In front of the Dagon, the Lord of the Valley, the remainder of the text is damaged. Okay, so you have 3 days of this sort of mourning situation. Then on the 4th day, so 3 days and the 3 days and the 3 nights, mourning. On the 4th day, the goddess is made to reappear, literally raise. Taboo is that's in the tablet. Literally, the word for raise is in the tablet. Following Arnaud's interpretation, the underworld part would be personified deities such as Sewala and Rashab. From another point of view, the laying down. So that's another thing. We're not gonna get into that. I'm talking about the dying, rising stuff. So there is. So let's go back. Let's go a little bit farther. It says, here it is. Arnaud strengthens his argument for the existence of gods who die by means of the onomasticon, as there are theophoric names with the element Yamut, it's got that mot root. The dead literally means dead, or death. Sorry, death in Semitic languages, which according to Arnaud may be related to dying. The interpretation has been questioned, and of course it has. And so there's that. There's back and forth with scholars. Some people think this is true. I think he's got strong arguments. Who am I to say he's wrong? Who am I to say he's right? Right? I'm just giving you, like, there's some data out there that suggest there are dying and rising festivals in the springtime. That's one of them. That's one of the oldest. Now, another one that's really important that I think is the game over, 3-pointer at the buzzer, game over, slam dunk, whatever you want to call it, and that is the Hilaria Festival. So I'm gonna go right now. I have Robert Turkin's Cults of the Roman Empire. This is one of the greatest scholars that I've ever read. Professor of Roman history. He was also an archaeologist as well. So, former student of Ecole Normale Superior, member of the Français in Rome and Institute of France, published widely on Roman antiquity. This guy's a real deal. He's a professor. Cults of the Roman Empire. I'm going to show you what he says about the Hilaria. This is a festival dedicated to Attis, the Roman god Attis, imported from Phrygia, from the east. So he's got, in the first chapter of the book, the Great Mother and the Eunuchs. He says he goes back to where it came from, because I want to be clear about something real quick. When it comes to the Hilaria, the reason why scholars don't bring this up as Christian influencing the Christians, they run away from this because the sources come late, and not all of them though. The major ones do. So, for example, Firmicus Maternus and Arnobius. Those are the two biggest sources that actually go in depth about the Hilaria. They're the ones who tell us that this is a dying and rising salvation, Attis dead for 3 days, resurrection, mourning, all that stuff that you just heard in the Kisu happens with Attis. But the problem is, the reason why what I'm saying sounds crazy to you, like if you never heard it, like I'm lying almost, the reason why scholars aren't talking about this as much is because the very detailed sources come from later 3rd and 4th century sources. So they go, it's after the Gospels. Fine. However, that's not what he says here. So let's read this. He says, the grandson of Livia, the mother of Augustus, by the way, belonged to a family whose clan Appius Attius went back to the famous Sabine Atticlausus and recalled the very name of Attis, Papa, the Phrygian name, by the way. We're talking about Claudius here. By the way, Claudius ruled, let's get his exact dates actually. When did Claudius rule? It's 40s, I believe, but I'm trying to make sure I get this right. Claudius ruled from 41 to 54. Long time. It's a nice 13-year, decent amount of time. So we're talking way before the Gospels and arguably before Paul. I mean, that's when he starts. It'd be in the time of Paul. And then Caligula is after. So if Paul's letters are authentic, it looks like he's writing in the reign of Caligula, because he's talking about like horrible shit going on, like look at the wrath that's going against the Jew. That would make sense during the reign of Caligula, who's actually wreaking havoc on them. So I think, Caligula, who's before Claudius. Nero is after Claudius. So Paul could be writing right before this or contemporary with this time. Fine. But like I said, Paul does not say anything about Jesus getting crucified during Passover. That comes in the Gospels, which are all after this. So let me finish reading this before I'm getting ahead of myself, why I'm even bringing this up. The reason why I'm even doing the dating right now. Claudius took interest in the mysteries of Eleusis when he tried in vain to bring across to the herbs, and his erudition, encouraged by the historian Livy, had perhaps led him to read the work of Timotheus on the religion of Pessinus. So that's a 200 BC, I think it is. Among the freedmen of the Greco-Oriental origin, whose influence and activities were growing stronger at the time in the imperial court. Many came from Phrygia, where the assets of the imperial treasury were considerable. Apart from the palace and the civil service, Anatolians must have been numerous at Ostia. And the reason why is they thought they were from Troy. This is right next to Troy. They thought this is where their ancestors came from. So they had a huge connection to this part of the world, where the cult of Cybele would experience increasing success during the following century. At all events, it was apparently Claudius. This is huge right here. This changes everything if this is right. It was apparently Claudius who instituted and had inscribed on the Roman calendar a ceremony which, after a fashion, opened the Holy Week. This is exactly what Orthodox Christians call this week right now, the Holy Week. We're in it right now. They call it the same thing. Of the god Attis. The entry of the tree, March 22nd, the Brotherhood of the Woodcutters, Dendrophori, a place on which traces foundation to first Claudius's birthday. Carried in procession to the Palatine Temple, a pine tree fell in the memory of the tree at those whose foot Attis had destroyed his virility. The festival implies at least part of the cycle of celebrations which in later calendars mark the second fortnight in March. For like the procession of the tree, they liturgically reenacted the phase that were indissociable from the foundation myth. Okay, what is going on here? Robert Turkin, and by the way, Robert Turkin's not just making this up. This is in the primary sources. John the Lydian, a very educated scholar, Byzantine scholar, 400 AD around that time, he says this. He says the Hilaria festival was instituted by Emperor Claudius. Now, we can't go before that. It has to be either Claudius or later. And the reason why is in Ovid's Fausti, Ovid gives us a major description about the festivals in his Fausti. He doesn't mention Hilaria. So Hilaria was not a part of the Roman liturgical calendar in the 1st century BC. 1st century AD, according to the primary sources, it is Claudius in the 40s who institutes this festival. And so some people want to say, no, well, the sources for Firmicus Maternus 3rd and 4th, Arnobius is 3rd century, Firmicus is 4th century. We don't know what they were doing back then. Well, actually, you can't say that, because as Turkin points out, and as I'm going to show you, look at right here. We have sources from 160 in the reign of Antonius Pius, and Marcus Aurelius actually too. Marcus Aurelius adds a new day to the Hilaria called the Lavatio, the day of washing. So that's the last addition to the festival, which means the festival existed before this. So we have a time period now. Either it's Claudius to 160. So we have about a 120-year period that this festival can fall in. Either it's in the 40s and before the Gospels, or sometime before 160. But I think basically if John the Lydian's wrong, and Robert Turkin is wrong as well for following John the Lydian, and it's possible that Claudius didn't institute the mysteries. Well, we still have to be before 160, because we know it's before 160 because it's mentioned in the sources in 160 in inscriptions. So that's, I don't know if you're following my drift here. We have a contemporaneous death and resurrection festival in the same week as Easter of a God who dies for 3 days and resurrects. And it's either before the Gospels or contemporaneous or right after. So if John the Lydian is correct, we have to change everything we think about Easter. Because then we have the chances of this being the inspiration for the whole entire Easter festival are high at that point. Forget about Firmicus Maternus. There are late sources. You're right, they go into deep detail, but we know this festival existed at some point at the end of the first, early second century. So, celebrated on December 9th, 160 in Lyon for the consecration of the Archigallus. We do not know what this liturgy consisted of. A famous page from Firmicus Maternus has been connected with mother worship cult. The Christian pamphleteer recalls a night of prayers and a lamentations chanted rhythmically in the shadows until the moment when a light shines. The priest anoints the bosom of the worshippers attending, murmuring slowly, "Have faith, O believers, God is saved, and for us salvation will emerge from his suffering." This is quoted in Greek by Firmicus Maternus, what he's saying that the priest of Attis would say out loud after at midnight, when the whole temple would be dark, and the priest would light a candle. This is exactly what you see in Orthodox churches in Greece. I was there myself. I watched it with my own eyes. They do this same ritual where they turn off all the lights at midnight and they light a torch, and everyone starts going crazy for the resurrection of Christ is announced. It's just on the nose. Then the following day, and by the way, I just want people to realize this is after 3 days of mourning. Firmicus Maternus relates, they mourned for 3 days, and then on March 25th, they rejoice. That's what the word hilaria means. It means rejoicing. They rejoice for the resurrection of Attis. It's proclaimed. Okay. Attis. So look at this. At least the 4th century texts tell us this. But a bas relief of the Antonine era found at Ostia shows us beside the dead Attis, at the foot of the pine, a little Attis standing in some sense reborn. So we have archaeological evidence saying that even though 4th century and 3rd century sources who describe this ritual are much later, we have archaeological data to support the idea the Antonine era is the 140s. You know what I mean? We're talking contemporaneous. I mean, think about this. Let's pretend for a second that 140s is when this was invented. Okay. Think about this. What makes more sense? Christians that no one knows about. Now remember this. Celsus is the first writer to give an in-depth scholarly paper on what Christianity is. Before that, you have Tacitus and Suetonius and Josephus who barely know what the hell's going on. Pliny the Younger meets a few Christians, doesn't know what's going on. They don't know what Christianity is. They don't know the myths about Christianity. They know there's a guy named they spell his name wrong, Christus. They don't know what Christianity is. So for you to think that a festival in 140 pops up out of nowhere and just has all these things lining up with Christianity, that they adopted some random Jewish sect that no one even knows who they are, and they're going to adopt all their customs and make it a Roman holiday. Or you think that's more likely, or this festival existed in the time of Claudius, and when the Gospels are being written, just like all the other parts of the Gospels that are drawing from Greco-Roman cultural milieu at the time period and Judaizing it or Christianizing it, the Beatles is the Roman Empire. Christianity is the indie band that's performing for their block party. No one knows who they are. The Beatles is the Roman imperial cult that everyone knows who the Roman imperial cult is. Everyone knows the festivals. You're all celebrating them because you're in Rome. You're in the Roman Empire. You know what Saturnalia is. You know what the Games of Apollo is. You know what the you know all this, so you would know this. So what's more likely? The pagans are influenced by the indie band, Christians, or the indie band is inspired by the big highly produced, Columbia Records Addis Festival, inspiring the Gospels, and they're rewriting this festival, this 3-day motif of death and resurrection for Christ, who they think died and resurrected. Just throwing that out there. I think the latter's way more likely. People don't think about this stuff. They think like, oh, if this happened in 140, they must have been borrowing from Christianity. Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence that the Roman imperial cult is adopting things from Christianity and incorporating it into their empire? Don't see it. It's not there. It's the other way around. You can see Christians adopting Roman imperial stuff, like in the 3rd century when Christ starts to take on solar aspects, and all of a sudden he's born on December 25th in the 3rd century, which lines up with all the stuff happening in Mithraism and Sol Invictus. So that happens, but not the other way around. Okay, so I think I've read enough of this. Here, just want to show you one more thing. So on that day, Severus Alexander ate pheasant. It was under cover of this festival that a terrorist named Maternus, dressed as a soldier of the guard, thought he could assassinate communists. So the reason why this is important is because even in 187, which is, it's late 2nd century, we're not talking super early now, but we know this festival was going on in 187 because it mentions that Commodus was nearly assassinated during the Hilaria. So this is mentioned in the sources. Firmicus Maternus is not the first person to mention this source. People say that, they're lying. They don't know what they're talking about. We have evidence of this festival existing long before Firmicus Maternus. So the point I'm making here is, look, let me just say this real quick. Let me just finish up what I'm getting at. If it's true that John the Lydian is right, and Claudius did institute the Hilaria, then Easter's pagan. Easter is a pagan holiday that was redone for re-Christianized and applied to Jesus. It's totally pagan in roots. And that Jesus did not actually go down for Passover and die and then resurrect no. And maybe, you know what? There's still a chance that he did go down for Passover. And that the writers of the Gospels were like, holy shit, this guy died during this time of the year when there's all these festivals going on. And by the way, right around this time period, Josephus mentions another festival of a dying and rising God. Let me pull this up, actually. Here it is right here.
Flex
this thing, do these things. Want this, these things.
the dynamic and interconnected nature of ancient Mediterranean religious practices, where deities could embody similar themes across different cultures while retaining unique aspects within their original context. For example, in Cyprus, Ashmun was syncretized with Melkart, and also Ibiza is given by a dedication reciting, "To his lord Ashmun Melkart." Melkart is the Punic Heracles, was also a dying and rising deity, venerated at the spring equinox. Shocker, I know. At this point, you must be thinking this is getting out of control, with all these sons or daughters of God dying and resurrecting at Easter time. Either I'm lying and making all this up, or your favorite seminarian Bible scholar has a lot of explaining to do. And I implore you to fact check everything I'm saying. I also am not even close to being done yet. There is overwhelming data to support that Melkart, like Osiris, Tammuz, Romulus, Ishtar, Eshmun, Attis, Adonis, Persephone, Huankinthos, Orpheus, and Dionysus, is a dying and rising or katabasis hero who is venerated at the spring equinox. The peer-reviewed book, Phoenicians and the West, Politics, Colonies, and Trade, by Professor of Archaeology Maria Eugenia Aubet, states, Melkart played the central role in the Phoenician Spring Festival, during which he died and was resurrected, an annual festival during the same week as Easter, Passover, and Roman Hilaria, was the annual spring celebration of Melkart's resurrection. This is supported by Josephus, who also cites Menander of Ephesus, saying he also went down and cut down materials of timber out of the mountain called Lebanon for the roof of the temples. And when he had pulled down the ancient temples, he both built the temples of Heracles, Eshmun, Melkart, and that of Ashtart. And he was the first to celebrate the resurrection of Heracles in the month of Peritius. Josephus uses the Greek word egersis for Heracles, which is the same word Matthew uses for resurrection of Jesus. Meta 10, egersin, ought to aselthan, and coming out of the graves after his resurrection, egersis, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. The Christian scholars who translated Josephus went out of their way to not use the word resurrection for Heracles, and instead use the word awaken.
This is something that bothers me when I find this all throughout these translated texts from a lot of scholars that refuse to use the word resurrect, and they'll use like reawaken or like reanimate. They don't want to use the word resurrect because they'll say this too. They'll literally will say, well, it brings a lot of baggage. It sounds a lot like Christianity. We don't want to give off the wrong impression. We want to make sure people know there's a difference here. No, dude, you know what the word means. Tell people what the word means. It means resurrect. Let me show you. Egersin. Here it is. Egersis, Egersin. Resurrection in Matthew. This is literally the name of the festival of Melkart. The Egersis festival. The resurrection festival. In the springtime. In the springtime. I don't know what else. It's right there. It's whatever.
When resurrection is the correct word to be used here. Pathetic. Welcome to seminarian Bible scholarship, where more work goes into hiding things than revealing them. Also, Josephus does use the name for Heracles. However, the temple in Phoenicia was dedicated to Melkart, who was fully synced with the healer Eshmun by the late 1st century. Eshmun was clearly a syncretic god passed down from Assyrian Bel and synced with Ophiuchus in Phoenicia, and was venerated in the Levant from the 7th century BCE to the 5th century of the Common Era. Evidence of pilgrimages to his temple from all over the Roman Empire lasted up until the Christian era in the 4th century, and severing coins of Eshmun are minted in Syria and Lebanon in the 3rd century. Eshmun is synced not only with Melkart, but also with Adonis and Attis. If you are wondering if there is actual textual evidence or primary sources from early Christians in the late 1st and early 2nd century that acknowledge that these dying and rising gods are linked with Jesus in any way, the answer is yes. But I will get to those texts at the very end, because there are things that need to be discussed before that is shown.
Hi, my name is Tami, and
Adonis is another one that's hotly debated because Some sources say it happens his festival was in the midsummer, and there's a few that say like the play, I forgot which play it was. Anyways, I think I show it here. So it's in the spring.
Etruscan port city of Pyrgi, Italy. They are significant for several reasons, primarily because they offer a rare example of bilingual text from the ancient world. 2 of the tablets are inscribed in Etruscan, and the third is in Phoenician, providing valuable insights into the languages and the interaction between the Etruscans and Phoenicians. The tablets were dedicated to the Phoenician god Astarte, consort of Eshmun, and are believed to have been part of a ceremonial offering made by Theferi Velianus, the king of Caere, the Etruscan city controlling Pyrgi at the time, making a dedication to the goddess. This is indicated by the inscriptions which detail the offering and consecration made by Velianus to Astarte. Astarte, who is Lady Babylon, or Ishtar, who has been talked about at length in this video, makes her mark on Rome all the way back in the days of the Etruscans. The significance of the Pyrgi tablets offers insights into the religious practices, diplomatic relations, and cultural exchanges between the Etruscan and Phoenician people. Furthermore, the Pyrgi tablets shed light on the extent of the Phoenician influence in the Mediterranean and the interconnectedness of the ancient Mediterranean cultures. They are among the most important archaeological finds related to the Etruscans, a civilization that played a significant role in the history of ancient Italy, but left behind relatively few written records. They also show how we can see Eshmun in one inscription can be Adonis or Attis in the other inscriptions.
That was kind of the big point in what I'm saying here. So these Pyrgi tablets that we found are, one side is Etruscan, the other side Phoenician, and the Etruscan side is mentioning Adonis, and the Phoenician side is translating that. Well, it might be vice versa. I don't know which one's the original, but they're both. It doesn't matter. One of them has Adonis, and the other one, Adonis and Venus. I'm sorry, Adonis and Venus are on the Etruscan side, and the other side has the same exact text, but it's in Phoenician. It's the same story, but it has Astarte and Eshmun. So you know that they're equating. This is how they're equating these figures together. It's kind of crazy how that works. And by the way, another reason why this is such a big deal is because in the Suda, the god Ion is called Adonis and Osiris. And then other sources say Ion is Dionysus and Osiris. So it's like, and then there's sources say he's Mithras. So there's all kinds of theocrasias happening with these figures, these gods that have these festivals around the same time period. Whereas the city Dionysia, Easter, the Gersis festival, the Hilaria festival, and Osiris has one going back very far where they would set up these beds for Osiris and they would plant some sort of like flower in these beds. And when the flower would rise, it would say it was the announcement of the resurrection of Osiris. So I'm just trying to show you how much all this stuff overlaps. And the authors of the Gospels would know this. They're educated. They know Greek. They know history. They know how to connect gospel or Old Testament prophecies to the Gospels. They're obviously highly educated. They know this stuff. So,
while the goddess Astarte becomes Venus, this is an early demonstration of Romani interpretatio, where different languages tell nearly identical myths, but transfer the names of gods within their pantheons. The Phoenician text of the Pyrgi tablets, Western Italy, seem to indicate commemoration of the death of Adonis was an important rite in central Italy as far back as 500 BCE. The Phoenician phrase, Bim Kabir Alim, on the day of burial of the divinity, refers to this rite. Then, the phrase, the death of the handsome Adonis. Prime example, Adonis is another god whose death and resurrection was celebrated at the spring. Ritual mourning for Adonis was widespread from Phoenicia to Greece. As we mentioned in the beginning of the video, the mourning for Tammuz by Ishtar was a famous Sumerian poem recited during the Akitu festival. Sappho, the famous poet from Lesbos, who lived all the way back in the 7th century BCE, even before the Persians defeated the Assyrians, wrote this famous poem.
Cytherea, thy dainty Adonis is dying. Ah, what shall we do? O nymphs, let it echo, the voice of your crying, the greenwood through. O forest maidens, smite on the breast, rend ye the delicate woven vest. Let the well ring wild and high. Ah, for Adonis! Cry, O Sappho, how canst thou chant the bliss of Kypris after such day as this? O Adonis, thou leavest me, woe for my lot, and Eros, my servant, availeth me not. So wails Cytherea, grief distraught. Who shall console me for thee? There is none. Not Ares, my god-lover, passionate one, who sware in his jealousy forth to hell. Hephaestus, my spouse, from his palace, if he dared but to lift his eyes unto me. Not he can console me, Adonis, for thee. Well for Adonis, well. A lament for Adonis, Sappho, 600 BCE.
The obvious parallels to Ishtar and Tammuz go without saying.
Yeah, okay. I even said it. I said it exactly what I was just going to say right now. That is 7th century BC. Well, it's right at the end of the 7th century BC. We're talking the Assyrians are still, this is before the Persian period. This is the Assyrian period, or the Neo-Babylonian period. It doesn't matter. The point is, this is during the time when Ishtar and Dumuzi still have active festivals going on in the Near East, and they're still inspiring, people living in Anatolia at that time, which would be the Lydians at the time. The Phrygians would be there, the Cappadocians would be there. The Hittites are gone, but the Greeks are around, and they're Sappho is being inspired by. Hold on, let me put myself. Sappho is being inspired by this Babylonian myth of Ishtar mourning for Dumuzi. That's what that was. That was a Greek version. Sappho's wailing and beating her breast. Let me show you where that comes from. I can show you right now where that comes from, and it's fun. It's crazy how this all connects. I'll show you right now where that comes from. So let me see if I can find it here. Baal and Marduk. That's not the one. Descent of Ishtar. So I'm trying to see. Do I want to stop there? Yes, right here. Right here. So this is exactly where Sappho gets the inspiration for the Adonis myth.
Called Esther in the Hebrew Bible, in the Greek Septuagint, wide-ranging in versions and manuscript traditions, but all about a Jewish queen named Esther, pronounced Esther in Hebrew, who lived in the Persian court of Xerxes, along with Mordecai, who in Hebrew is Mardoki, and Mardochaeus in Greek. Notice the names Esther and Mardoki, which some scholars and myself have noticed sounds a lot like Marduk and Ishtar. In the longest extant version of the Book of Esther from the Septuagint, preserved in the Catholic and Orthodox Bibles, and otherwise considered apocryphal, the story seems to align very much with the descent of Ishtar. Mardoki is in trouble in the court of Xerxes and is about to be slain due to Haman, one of the members of the court who plotted against Mardoki. In chapter 4, Esther, like Ishtar, ritually mourns for 3 days for Mardoki and for the people of Israel due to the situation they are under, being in a diaspora. The text reads,
And all Israel cried with all their might, for the death was before their eyes. And Queen Esther betook herself for refuge to the Lord. being taken as it were in the agony of death. And having taken off her glorious apparel, she put on garments of distress and mourning. And instead of grand perfumes, she filled her head with ashes and dung. She greatly brought down her body, and she filled every place of her gland, adorning with the torn curls of her hair. Esther 4:18.
We see a similar tearing and ash-covering mourning rite being taken up by Ishtar for Dumuzi in Akkadian texts.
Why have you covered your head with a cloth? You who are a shepherd, how you walk about. Holy Ishtar weeps bitterly in her house, which having descended from heaven stands on the earth. She wears sackcloth and ashes, rips out her hair, tears her torn sinews, rips out her hair, plucks out her hair like burr rushes. The lady wept at the meaning of the decreed fate. Dumuzi wept at the meaning of the decreed fate. The mourning for Dumuzi.
The apocryphal manuscripts also have a similar plot as the Descent of Ishtar, in which Esther is attended by eunuchs, just as Ishtar was attended by the Gali, who are also eunuchs. Esther then descends through multiple portals in the palace until she is finally brought into the chamber of the king, where she puts on a royal attire, and like Ishtar, finds favor with the queen of Hades. Esther finds favor with King Xerxes.
On the third day, putting an end to her prayers, she took off her penitential garments and arrayed herself in royal attire. In making her state appearance, after invoking the all-seeing God and Savior, she took her 2 eunuchs. On the one she leaned gently for support, while the other followed her bearing her train. She glowed with the perfection of her beauty, and her countenance was joyous as it was lovely, though her heart was shrunk.
Now, isn't it interesting that this is the Purim festival, which is a few weeks ago, which is leading up to Passover? Well, it's to me, what I think is going on here is they're incorporating that Akitu sort of tradition of Ishtar as the savior, descending into the underworld, but also the reason why I brought this up now in connection to Adonis is you have other texts where Ishtar is beating her breast and putting on sackcloth and ashes and ripping her hair out and weeping for Adonis. Before I even let me just pull that up real quick and I'll come back to this because you got to see that with Descent to Ishtar. Is this it right here? The wailing, the first lament. I think this is it right here. Yeah, right here.
The dead are raised with him, and the crops and trees blossom and bring spring and warmth to the world.
He has gone to the bosom of the earth, and the dead are numerous in the land. Men are filled with sorrow. They stagger by.
Now notice how Sappho said something very similar about Adonis being gone. Like no one can comfort me anymore. Adonis is gone, and she's mourning over Adonis like that was her lover. Now notice the language is very similar to what you find with Ishtar.
Day in gloom. In the month of thy year, which brings not peace, hast thou gone. Thou hast gone on a journey that makes an end of thy people. The Holy One of Ishtar, in the middle of the year, the fields languish. The shepherd, the wise one, the man of sorrows, why have they slain? In his temple, in his inhabited domain, the child, Lord of knowledge, abides no more. In the meadows, verily, verily, the soul of life perishes. The wailing is for the herbs. The first lament is, they are not produced. The wailing is for the grain. Ears are not produced. The wailing is for the habitations, for the flocks which bring forth no more. The wailing is for the perishing wedded ones, for the perishing children. The dark-headed people create no more.
Ishtar mourns over the death of her lover, the shepherd god of agriculture, Tammuz. She then decides to descend into the land of no return to face her sister, Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld. Ishtar, when she arrived at the gates of Kernugi, Hades, addressed the gatekeeper.
I shall raise up the dead, and they shall outnumber the living.
In order to save him, she must descend through 7 gates of the underworld and remove 7 articles of clothing until she is naked, and then must face the judgment of her.
Now remember, this is what Esther is rewriting for Mordecai and Esther. That's not a historical. There's no Queen Esther in history. Didn't happen. There's no primary sources that mention Queen Esther. She does not exist. She's a rewriting of what you're about to hear right here.
Ereshkigal, and ask her to return her lover Tammuz from death. Enki, the creator and god of wisdom, the Sumerian Prometheus, creates a trickster plot to help her succeed in her mission to resurrect the dead.
Enki, in the wisdom of his heart, created a person. He created the good looks playboy. Come, good looks the playboy. Set your face toward the gates of Kernugi. The 7 gates of Kernugi shall be opened before you. Ereshkigal, the queen of Hades, shall look at you and be glad to see you. When she is relaxed, her mood will lighten. Get her to swear the oath by the great gods, Anunnaki. Raise your head, pay attention to the water of life, saying, Hey, my lady, let them give me the water skin that I may drink from it.
Now I want you to remember the good looks playboy for later in this video, because I think this can possibly be influential to the descent of Orpheus to Hades. More on that later. As a result of Enki's plan and Ishtar's descent.
I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit and show you kind of the conclusion, because this is the most important part. Let's see. Here we go, right here.
Was hung from a hook on the corpse. A peak, she struck her. Inanna was turned into a corpse.
So Inanna descends all the way down to the hell, and she faces her sister, the queen of who's Persephone, basically. And this is what happens to her. She gets killed. She dies. She sacrifices herself. It's like Jesus. Like, she goes into the depths of the material world, like from the heavens down into the the world of flux, and dies, becomes the sacrifice, dies. Just listen to what it says. This is shocking.
A piece of rotting meat, and was hung from a hook on the wall.
Similar to Jesus, the text specifically states that Ishtar is dead for 3 days and 3 nights.
When, after 3 days and 3 nights, Inanna had not returned, Ninshubur set up a lament for her by the ruins. She beat the drum for her in the temple. She circled the houses of the gods. She tore at her eyes. She tore at her mouth. She tore at her thighs. She dressed herself in a single garment like a beggar. Alone, she set out for Nippur and the temple of Enlil.
Once again, it is Enki who saves the day. Inanna's father god Enki, who creates 2 Gala, 2 eunuch beings created neither male or female, to aid her in returning to Earth. The Gala enter the underworld like flies, and following Enki's specific instructions, attach themselves closely to Ereshkigal, the queen of the dead, is seen in distress.
From under his fingernail, Father Enki brought forth dirt. He fashioned the dirt into Kergara, a creature neither male nor female. From under the fingernail of his other hand, he brought forth dirt. He fashioned.
Anyways, the Gallic go down, they sprinkle the water of life onto her, and she resurrects. And then the dead are raised up with her. And then, so you can see right here, you can see the mimesis happening. Now, I wanted to show you that to show you how Sappho is obviously inspired by that when she writes about Adonis's death, and Venus is Ishtar. Venus is rewritten as Ishtar. Or Ishtar is rewritten as Venus. But you can see mourning for Mordecai. Esther mourns for Mordecai. She literally rips out her hair, beats her breast, puts on sackcloth and ashes. Ishtar does the exact same thing. beats her breasts, rips out her hair, wears sackcloth and ashes. Attended by eunuch maids, attended by eunuch Gali. Seeks deliverance from God, seeks deliverance from Enki, who's he's God. Descends through portals of the palace, descends through 7 gates of hell. Face to face with King Xerxes, face to face with Queen Ereshkigal. Finds favor with the king, finds favor with the queen. Saves Mordecai, saves Tammuz. Mordecai replaced with Haman, and Haman gets killed. Tammuz is replaced with Ningashita, and Ningashita ends up in the underworld. So there's a lot of and the sequence of events is exactly the same order. So, what else did I want to talk about in this video before I open it up and let people on? Osiris has the Sham El Nessim festival as well. And he's equated with Dionysus. He's a death and resurrection. Everyone knows about that one. That's not really a big deal. Oh, you know what? I wanted to show you about these. That's what I'll do before I end this. Orpheus Descent, Catabasis, the Anabasis, that's all there. You can watch this video. It's called Unblemished Lamb. But this right here, I think, is very fascinating that I haven't talked about a lot on this channel. The Therapeutai.
Philo of Alexandria in the 1st century, in his book On the Contemplative Life, writes about a group of Therapeutai who he praises. Having mentioned the Essenes, who in all respects selected for their admiration and for their especial adoption of the practical course of life, and who excel in all, or what perhaps may be less unpopular and invidious thing to say, in most of its parts, I will now proceed in the regular order of my subject to speak about those who have embraced the speculative life. They are called Therapeutai and Therapeutides, to heal, either.
Let's super chat. Let me see what we got going on here. Thank you, Geddes Abramovics. I appreciate the supers. You're the reason why I can do this the way I do it. Totally 100% funded by you guys. So I appreciate the super chats. It definitely helps me out. Hey, what do you think about Hades and Persephone's story? There is this interesting connection to the 3-day festival, the Eleusinian Mysteries, about Demeter's search. Yeah, Hades is, he abducts her, or Pluto, you can call him, either way. He abducts Persephone. She becomes the queen of the underworld. Demeter searches for her. And this is also an agricultural myth. I think that's what you're getting at. The wandering of Demeter represents the cycling of the seasons. So the return of Persephone brings springtime. So she doesn't necessarily die, but I don't think it matters because you have her literally being taken away from her life. She's a pure virgin maiden called Kori, which you can translate that as maiden or even sometimes virgin. She's this pure young maiden virgin, and she's picking flowers, and then a whole chasm opens up, and Hades, this king of the underworld, brother of Zeus, one of the most powerful gods in the entire cosmos, comes and takes her and brings her down. And she's warned not to eat anything while she's down there, but she takes a bite of the pomegranate. And because of that even after Demeter pulls a bunch of strings and gets Zeus to finally let her back up, because she ate the pomegranate, she has to return. And she ends up becoming the queen anyway and marrying Hades and becoming like the queen of the underworld properly. But it's interesting that you have becomes a cycle, return and ascent. The catabasis, the anabasis, the death of agriculture, wintertime, the rising of springtime. So Persephone is a dying and rising god in that sense. She's a descending and ascending goddess. And she's linked to Adonis as well. Because Venus, just like how she took the bite of the pomegranate, and it's like Eve, by the way. By the way, one of her epithets is Ewa, which is a Bacchic chant. It doesn't even mean anything. It's just a chant. Ewa. Like El could mean like good, so it's like a good. It means like good. Of Ewa. And that's one of her epithets. What's so fascinating about her having that epithet is she literally bites the pomegranate. And instead of getting kicked out of paradise, like what happens with Eve, Eve is Ewa. Instead of getting kicked out of paradise, she gets trapped in Hades. So there's a reversal happening, but it's weird that you have two Eve, Eva, and Ewa. They're both taking a bite of a magic fruit, and they're either getting kicked out of paradise or stuck in Hades. So that's fascinating too. But yeah, she's also linked to Adonis. Adonis makes a deal where he has to spend 6 months in Hades and 6 months in the back up to the regular world with Venus. So he spends half of the year with Venus, and now the other half of the year with Persephone because they both fall in love with him. So Adonis represents the two. He represents the two solstices. He's a total. He's not just a spring god. He's a spring and summer god. But yeah, they're both encoding the same mystery. The death of the world is going through it. The world of flux goes through these cycles of death and rebirth, and we take part in that as humans. That's the point. That's the mystery of Eleusis. And yeah, that's the top layer of the mystery, I should say. But thank you for that super chat. I appreciate that. There's another one as well. Thank you. Pop Not Soda 216. Thank you so much. Thank you for what you do. Happy Easter. And happy Easter to you too. I appreciate the super chat. Happy Easter. Happy spring equinox. Happy Anthesteria. Happy City Dionysia. By the way, the City Dionysia was a big time of the year where they would do the award ceremony. So what do I mean by that? I'll just show you this. At the City Dionysia, which is also called the Great Dionysia, it happened in this week. It would happen during this week right now in Athens, at the city of Athens. They would do, in the Linnea too. It's a new wine vintage, a new wine festival, and they would perform tragedies and give out the winner of best tragedy. It was like the Oscars, but they would perform it. So we have a whole list from papyrus. This is a papyrus right here, the Fosti IG. Oh no, it's an inscription. I'm sorry. And then we have another inscription it's called the Victor's List, and this one right here. So we could put these lists together, and we get a whole list of all the winners. Euripides won in 441. The Bacchae won in 405 BCE. Best comedy, you can see Eupolis, the Flatterers, won in 421. All these, the Birds won in 414. So we know who won these festivals. And by the way, I should say this too. And my friends in Greece, they sent me a video. They still celebrate. This is still going on right now. The Dionysia. They still celebrate Dionysia. Let me see. My friend sent me a video. I'm going to play it for you guys. This just happened like a week or two ago. A couple weeks ago. Just give me a second. I'm pulling it up. Where did it go? Here we go. Is this it? Oh, that's not it. Where'd it go? Huh. Did I lose it? Hold on a second. I know he sent it to me. I think is it in this chat that he sent it to me? Links. Hang on, I'll find it. I gotta find this now. It's gotta be in here somewhere. Did he delete it from the messenger? You know what? Where's my phone? Here it is. Hang on, I can find it right now. You got to see this. It's so worth seeing. It's so worth seeing. Hold on. Oh, wait a minute. Is it from a different? Oh, okay. I found it. Okay. I got it. It's in a different chat. It was in a different chat. Wrong chat. I got all these Greeks in my chat. You guys are confusing me. Okay. Here we go. This is the city Dionysia of Athens, Greece of 2026. So. So that's Athens, right? That's this year in Athens. I was just there actually less than a year ago. So thank you for the super chat. And then we have a new member just joined, Pop Not Soda. Thank you for this. Thank you for joining. I appreciate that. Like I said, you're the reason why I could do this. So I appreciate you guys so much. Wes, thank you for the $5. How's it going? Is there a reason to believe the rewriting of the stories to exclude the original message to include all people was not malicious? They were angry? Is there a reason to believe that No, it doesn't always have to be malicious because people are inspired by things. Virgil rewrites Homer. It doesn't have to be malicious. The author doesn't have to be malicious. It's the people that use it, that the people who take it and use it against people that are malicious. It's the people that go around and say this is your rights that your ancestors gave you. Those are demons. You need to stop that, or you're going to go to hell. And this one, even though we were inspired by your ancestors, this is the real one. That's malicious. That is malicious. But the people writing the myths might not be malicious. So, sometimes you're just inspired by the culture and you rewrite stuff. Like Virgil or whatever. It just happens. So yeah, it doesn't have to be malicious. It can just be a inspiration. Thank you for that super chat. That was a great question. Bach and Pan Dionysus in the house. What's going on? Thank you for the 5. Become a member. $5 a month isn't bad. Let's help Neil keep going. Join the family. I so much appreciate that. Thank you very much for that super chat. That's very nice of you. And I definitely would appreciate all the help I can get. Definitely appreciate that. Thank you. I can't thank you enough. So I'm trying to think. Let's go. Was I going to finish that therapeutai real quick? And then I'm going to open up and I'll do like an hour and a half of people want to challenge what I'm saying or whatnot. We can do that. So let's play this.
God Most High is certainly a candidate, but also, since they are healers and physicians, I think another place that we should look is the cult of Asclepius, also called Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, to where we get the symbol of medicine from. The biggest temples to Asclepius are the Asclepion at Pergamon in modern-day Turkey, right next to the second biggest library in the Roman Empire, and a hotspot for early Christianity, the sanctuary of Asclepius at Epidaurus.
I was there, Epidavros. I was there.
I
was there after I made this video too. That's why I was so blown away when I was there, because I already made this, so I already had some knowledge of it, and I was tracking stuff down when I was there.
Pausanias connected with the god Eshmun. Then you have the Serapeum in Egypt, which was considered sacred to Asclepius as
I
well,
was there too, actually.
since Serapis was a syncretic
Both
deity
spots.
linked with Osiris, Asclepius, and Ion Plutonios. And then there is the Asclepion of
Wasn't there.
Carthage,
Never went
which is actually a temple dedicated to Eshmun Melkart, a syncretic deity linked with Eshmun the physician, and Melkart, who is the Punic Heracles, another dying and rising deity, who I will get back to shortly. The 1st century AD pool of Bethesda, described in the Gospel of John, where Jesus heals a lame man in chapter 5, was found by archaeologists in 1964 to be a part of an
Isn't
Asclepion
that crazy?
and a shrine dedicated to none other than Eshmun.
So according to the Gospels, the location that Jesus is healing people at is where there was a temple of Eshmun or Asclepius. Man,
A trilingual inscription from 2nd century BCE Sardinia, written in Latin, Greek, and Punic, also identifies Eshmun with the Greek Ophiuchus and the Latin Asclepius. Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, is the ancient 13th constellation that is on zodiacal ecliptic along with the other 12.
by the way, what's so crazy about this? Oh yeah, that's the 13th constellation, Ophiuchus. And this isn't just like a dubious like added addition. I'm not just like making Ophiuchus is on the zodiacal plane. It is exactly on, like there could be 13. The 12 constellations was not, that's just a made up number. Like you could do 30 if you wanted to with the stars there. Ophiuchus does sit exactly right in between Scorpius and Sagittarius. So it makes people wonder like why. I don't know. It's just an interesting constellation. It really is. But what was I saying right before that? The fact that in one tablet, Eshmun is being linked with Adonis, and then in another inscription, he's being called Ophiuchus, is kind of crazy. It's like the ancients are weird with this. This stuff is very fluid. There is no set in stone way to equate gods. You know what I mean? Like even Zeus and Jupiter can get a little fuzzy because Jupiter then can get equated with like Dis Pater, who's like an underworld. He's more like Hades, and then Zeus can be like Baal can be equated with that. There's a lot of weird. It's not 1 to 1. Is what I'm saying. It's like 1 to 1.5.
12 traditional zodiac constellations of the Greeks and Babylonians. This constellation of Ophiuchus was that of a man holding a rod entwined with a serpent and standing on scorpions and snakes. This imagery seems to be apparent in Luke's gospel as well. Behold, I give you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall hurt you. In the book of Numbers, Moses held up a bronze rod with a serpent coiled around it that worked as a magic wand that could heal people from poisonous serpent bites. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Make a fiery serpent and put it on a rod, and it shall come about that everyone who is bitten and looks at it will live." So Moses made a bronze serpent and put it on a rod, and it came about that if a serpent bit someone and he looked at the bronze serpent, he lived. Numbers 21. This was also drawn from in the Gospel of John. When Jesus is on the cross, he is compared to the serpent on a cross in the wilderness. Just as Moses lifted up the snake in the wilderness, the Son of Man must also be lifted up. This passage would become central to some early Christian groups, such as the Nassenes, Ophites, and Sethians, who I shall touch on later when it's relevant. To the ancient Greeks, this constellation represented the god Apollo himself, struggling with a huge snake that guarded the Oracle of Delphi. Later myths identified Ophiuchus with Laocoon, the Trojan priest of Poseidon, who warned his fellow Trojans about the Trojan horse and was later slain by a pair of sea serpents sent by the gods to punish him. The Romans marked this constellation as the healer god Asclepius, Apollo's son, who learned the secrets of raising the dead, healing the sick.
Another thing about Apollo, or I'm sorry, Asclepius, and actually I can show you this right now. I can show you this. I have the Greek Orphic hymns right here. And if you go to Apollo's hymn, or Asclepius's hymn, maybe I can take a picture of this and zoom in on for you so you can see it. I gotta find it real quick. Oh, here it is. Maybe I can zoom. Maybe I can just do a little. So you can see one side's modern Greek. This is the ancient Greek side. So let's just focus on that side. And you can see that if you can read Greek, see that first word. That first word. I'll let you guys take a look at it for a second. Maybe it's hard to read. Maybe it's blurry. Yeter. So, you know what? Let me take a picture of on my phone and send it to my Facebook, and I will download it real quick, and let's take a look at this word. You got to see this is. And while I'm doing that, I'm just going to keep playing this video, and I'll have it ready in just a second.
And keeping death at bay after observing one serpent bringing another healing herbs to prevent the human race from becoming immortal under Asclepius's care. Jupiter killed him with a lightning bolt, but later raised him up into the heavens to honor his works as a god. The famous symbol shared by Asclepius, Eshmun, and Ophiuchus is the symbol of the serpent on the rod, the universal symbol for health and medicine. The priest of Eshmun, as well as Ophiuchus and Asclepius, would be the most educated class of priests, arguably on the entire planet during this time. The pre-Socratics, such as Parmenides and Pythagoras, who were not only well-known philosophers, but also poets, mathematicians, astronomers, biologists, skeptics, psychologists, and most of all, lawgivers. They were well-known.
All right, so check this out. That word yeter. I want to just show you something interesting going on with yeter. And so this is the hymn to Asclepius. You can see it's evocative Asclepiae, despota PAGAN. The PAGAN is that epithet. But let's take a look at this first two words: panton, yeter. The healer of all. That's genitive. Healer of all. So, or is this healer? Now, what's so interesting about this word is, look at those first two letters. Can you see my mouse? Iota, eta. You know whose first two letters that is? That's Jesus. Jesus. Okay, you're like, okay, so what? Yeter. Well, ter is a stem. It's a common stem that you find and it means like a doer of. So pater is father. The father. Mater, mother. Like ter at the end means like denotes like the doer of whatever the prefix is. So yea. So someone doing yea is a yayer. So a doctor or a healer, something along those lines, right? So let me share the lexicon here. And there's different dialects. The yater is another dialect, but you can see right here there's the yeter, right? And it just means surgeon, healer, right? Deliverer, or like some sort of savior, right? Isn't that interesting? Deliverer. And look in the middle of Liddell, doctor, healer, right? And healer of political wrongs. Anyways, it usually means something along the lines of healer or doctor. But what I find fascinating about this word and why it's the first thing listed off in the Orphic hymn, just to go back to the Orphic hymn real quick. The first word listed in the Orphic hymn is, look at this. It's the first word listed in the Orphic hymn to Asclepius. He's the yea. And it makes you wonder. I'm not saying Jesus didn't exist, but I am suggesting the way they make him into a healer who goes around healing people and like healing sick and making people's sight come back and making limbs grow back and making old people be able to walk again. He's a Yeter. And his name, this is so weird. If you're a mythicist, you should pay attention to this, because you should be using this argument all the time. If you're a mythicist, you should be all over this. I don't know why they're not. His name, Yea, has inside of it the whole entire thing he's doing in the story. It's like in any fairy tale where the character's name is like Flying Man and he's flying around all the time. You wouldn't think that was a real person that existed. Now, it could be the case that since his name is Jesus, Jesus, the author wanted to somehow make him play out, make him like live up to his name. That's possibility. But there's also the possibility that Jesus is Yeter. He's the Asclepius, So I'm just saying, that's something I noticed. It doesn't get talked a lot. No one talks about that at all. I think it's weird. I think it's right there. Yea. He is yea. And by the way, Apollo, let me show you this. Let me see if I can find it in the... Yes, it's there. I was just guessing to see if it had this. It does. Yeos. There it is. There's the yea right there. Iota, eta. Just like Jesus' name. And look what it says. Read it. Invoked with the cry, yea, of Apollo. Yea is an actual cultic word for mourning and also rejoicing. Hilaria. Mournful, grievous, yeos. It's an epithet of Apollo. You can see, look at yea, Yah. Is this the one? Here it is. Yea. Exclamation of joy or enthusiasm. Oh, I'm sorry. My screen didn't move over. Okay, hold on. You're not seeing my screen. I didn't go. I moved to a different screen. Look at this. Oh, I went to the same stupid one again. Hold on. Watch this. Yea. Exclamation of joy or enthusiasm. Used in the cult of Apollo. Yea, Pagan. So Jesus' name, Jesus, has a cultic terminology encoded inside of it. You understand what I'm saying right now? And it has everything to do with healing. Look, you even have alalalai. Like there's like these all like people. A lot of people think on the classicist side think the hallelujah is a Judaizing of an ancient Greek alalutza. It's not the same word, but it's applying it to Yahweh, but it's using the same sort of cultic chant for Yahweh. And then this is something an Alexandrian probably would have pulled off with the cultural fusion going on. But anyways, yea, Pagan, yea. This is all stuff you find in the cult of Apollo and Asclepius, who are healers. Isn't that crazy? Like, does anyone else think that's kind of nuts? Here's Yeus. Of sounds. That's what it means. To throw. To flow. To speed. Okay. Anyways. You get that? Okay. So yeah. So when you see when you look at the word Jesus, let me see if I can find. Jesus' name in Greek. Look at this. When you look at Jesus' name, there it is. Yea. Yea, Zeus. I mean, obviously it comes from Yeshua. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just saying, what would a Greek think when they hear that? Especially when he's going around healing people in the story. His name is Jesus, and he's going around healing people in the story. What do you think a Greek audience would think when they hear that? They would think this is some sort of Apollonian, Asclepian savior god. That's what they would think. There was no doubt in my mind they would think. There's 100% they would think that, especially if they're not familiar with Joshua from the Old Testament. Thank you. We got another super chat in the house. Bach and Pan, Dionysus in the house. Beginning with the goddess, the practice of medicine was the first resurrection from the death. Yes, I was just about to show this, actually. You are getting ahead of me, dude. Let's look at this. I was literally about to show the cult of Apollo in southern Italy, ran by Parmenides, was doing this. They were putting people into comas who were sick, and then they were giving them like medicine and stuff, and they were bringing them back to life and asking them to report what their dreams were like in Hades, using dotes and antidotes too, which is part of the whole process. This is why we have that symbol in medicine today. These are the original doctors, the original Yeters. They were called Yeters too. This is what's so crazy. Seeing the whole symbol of the serpent. It's the Yeter symbol. Now, thank you for the super chat, but watch this. I'm about to show you exactly what you're talking about right now in this clip.
Worshippers of Apollo and his son Asclepius. And recent archaeology has shown that the schools of Parmenides and Pythagoras in southern Italy were deeply concerned with healing and medicines. In 1958, a series of archaeological discoveries were made in Velia in Italy, the Temple of Apollo, the center for the school of Parmenides. There was a statue that is among the most unique and rarest archaeological finds possibly of all time. The inscription at its base reads, Olus, son of Eukinos, healer in the year 379. Two more similar inscriptions on statues were discovered. All three had the name Olus, but the fathers' names were different, Aristod and Hieronymus. The dates were also different, 280, 379, and 446. Peter Kingsley, in his book, Dark Places of Wisdom, goes in depth on the significance of these inscriptions, saying that the term Olus is associated with an individual devoted to Apollo and signifies a unique aspect of worship dedicated to Apollo Olios, particularly along Anatolia's western coastlines where the Ionians once dwelled, such as Pythagoras, Thales, Heraclitus, and Parmenides. The epithet Olios carries a nuanced duality. Initially, describes attitudes such as lethal, harmful, or severe, acknowledging the darker aspects inherent in every deity. However, the Greeks also interpreted Oulios to mean the one who restores to health. This duality encapsulates Apollo's essence, simultaneously the healer and the destroyer, embodying the capacity to both inflict and cure. Apollyon in Greek means to destroy, but Apollo is a god of healing and restoration. Peter Kingsley has this to say in his book, Dark Places of Wisdom. You find that to them heroes weren't just figures in some mythical past. For them, the heroic ideal is something that had to be lived in the present. The aim of one's life, the life of a wise man, was to follow the way of the hero to live his ordeals, his sufferings, his transformation. That's what provided the spiritual purpose in the map of their existence. You can still see how this imitation of the hero was adapted by Christianity to become the imitation of Christ. Kingsley one of the great classicists and historians of our time, writes that these very Velians, from the school of Parmenides and Pythagoreans from the school of Croton, all who can technically be considered religious Orphics, built temples to Apollo in the southern coast of Italy, and at these places they conducted rituals of medically induced incubation. Parmenides set up a temple in Velia where the rites of incubation were performed, and the initiates would spend days or even weeks in a dark cave under the supervision of a magus and report his dreams to them for conducting research. It all sounds bizarre, but this was early science in the ancient world. They compared these rituals with the myths of Orpheus descending into the underworld to perform his music in the presence of the king and queen of Hades in order that he may raise his dead wife from the grave. Pythagoras, departing his native Samos in Ionia, lived in Egypt for 12 years, and then Babylon for another 12 years. Finally, after 24 years of education amongst the Chaldeans and Magi, he set sail for Italy, carried with him the traditions of the advanced Persian and Egyptian knowledge, including methods of incubation and practices for journeying to the underworld, demonstrating his deep reverence for the underworld goddess Persephone, who descended and returned from Hades. He transformed his new residence at Croton, Italy, into a medical sanctuary in the name of Apollo, showcasing his devotion. The ritual catabasis was no longer just mythology. This was reality to them. Xenophanes, student of Pythagoras in southern Italy, taught that God is one, supreme among gods and men, and not like men either in mass or mind. We can see the obvious roots of Judeo-Christian thought within the fragments of these pre-Socratic Orphics.
A oneness of being that is uncreated, unbegotten, alone begotten, whole, unmoved, unending, indestructible, homogeneous, continuous, contiguous, that it abides in one position, is indivisible, has always been as it is, and never can be any different.
These are Orphic, Peripatetic, Platonist, and Pythagorean philosophers who are also trained in medicine and history, as well as religious matters. Pyrrho, the founder of philosophical skepticism, traveled with Alexander the Great to Babylon and India and engaged with the brightest minds from
Oh, did I not read it? I thought I read it. Snake bites with herbs and cannabis, her sacrament. I thought I read it. Maybe I missed it. Okay. Well, yeah, I totally, yeah, I definitely see that for sure. But yeah, what I was trying to say is what you're saying with the resurrection from death thing. They definitely thought of it as a catabasis and an anabasis to these people going into these caves and coming back reborn. And it was like it was a rite of passage that they were doing. They were studying. It was like science. They were doing early science with this.
the Brahmins, Buddhists, as well as the Magi, and brought these ideas back to Egypt for the newly built Library of Alexandria. It is not impossible, in my opinion, and it's actually likely that Christianity draws some of its influence from Buddhist and Taoist thought via Pyrrhonism and the therapy.
So that's kind of most. I do want to open this up for a little bit, and obviously I'll still read super chats. People send them in. Does anyone want to challenge anything I'm saying? You think Christian? You want to prove that this all, Jesus actually did? We know for sure he got crucified during Passover, and this is all nonsense. There's no pagan influence. Come on in. That's who I want the most. But maybe you want to add some to the conversation too. That's fine. But I prefer challengers if I can. So let me get to that right now. Let me send in the chat. I'm going to put the link. There we go. I'll pin that message as well. Do we got any challengers? Let's see. So, yeah, that's most of my arguments of why Christianity might be completely pagan. I mean, like mostly pagan. If all that stuff, if it's true, if John the Lydian is correct, and it really was Claudius that instituted the mysteries of Attis and the Hilaria in the 40s, then that would mean to me that Christianity is pagan or heavily inspired by pagan. And we got someone joining. It's Mandy Moorhall. What's going on, man?
What's up, buddy?
I don't know why there we go.
Am I working? Am I on? I'm working.
Yeah, you're here.
How's it going, dude?
Good, man.
I just happened to end up in the studio and saw you send out the link, and I was like, oh shit, I'm here. Let's go on. We're doing a episode of Gluten Free Bread and Circus tonight, so was doing a little preparation for that, listening to you. I was like, hey, it all ties in. You're talking about all the same stuff I'm talking about on my show. What a coincidence.
That's good. That's good. I'll be watching it. I'll check it out. I'll tune in.
I do have a little bit of a bone to pick with you.
Yeah, that's what I wanted. That's what I'm glad.
We're picking the hell out of that bone. It's all three heads of Cerberus picking the hell out of that.
And Danny Kyle, I see you on the bottom that you're next.
So I want to give you a little bit of a better analogy so that we can help the rhetoric a little bit better. Before earlier today, you said that Christianity was more like an indie band, right? Mm-hmm. And they were the ones who were influenced by the main ones and mm-hmm. yada yada. Being an indie artist, I can tell you that a lot of indie bands are actually like very, very influential, right? Like there was an indie band that did the exact same riff as Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven, right? And Led Zeppelin stole that riff from an indie band and made it more popular, right? So the popular, they take stuff off from the underground all the time, right? A better analogy.
That's a good point.
Yeah, a little bit of a better analogy would be that Christianity is more like Weird Al Yankovic, right? Where he's taking it's like it would be like listening to a Christian argue that Easter is not like Easter isn't pagan is like listening to somebody who has only ever listened to Weird Al Yankovic their entire life and then hears Gangster Paradise and goes, this song's not about Amish people. Wait, this guy's fucking up the song. They're ruining it. Like, you know, it's the exact same fucking reaction, right? It's the exact same thing. So, you know, I would just a little tiny little
That's
critique.
A good point.
It's not an argument.
That's a fair point. That just making you. I think so. I would agree with that. I would say it's more often than not that the popular, the ones on MTV, you know, the ones that are touring the world and have Columbia Records behind them that are inspiring the little garage bands. But as you point out, there are occasions when those little garage bands run into a big, you know, Rolling Stone or whatever, and then they get they get stolen from. So that is true. It can go the other way. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying, but the likelihood is usually in the other direction. That's all.
Oh no, I mean the likelihood, but I'm just in general, you
make a great point.
You could avoid that critique and just say it's like it would be like Christians are like people who have only ever listened to Weird Al Yankovic. There's a brilliant comedian that has that same bit where he talks about how he's going to raise his kid only listening to Weird Al. What's up, Johnny? What up? So yeah, man.
No, that's a great point.
Just wanted to jump in here and
I'm glad you brought that nuance in.
Critique your rhetoric a little bit.
No, that was fair, man. That was great. I like that. That was a nice little adding nuance. I love it. So
yeah. From and keep in mind that Weird Al was a satirist, and Christianity is entirely satire. The Bible is 100%, start to finish, cover to cover. Every single word in the Bible is satire.
Okay, whatever you say, man.
All right, man. I'm gonna let you get some other people on here. I'll talk to you later.
All right, man. Good seeing you like always.
Peace.
See you, man. And we got Danny. I'm just going to read a super chat real quick, and then I'll get to your question next. Let's see. Gaddis Abramovics, thank you for the 5. Some more cool polls look at Sagittarius and Aquarius. When J-Man was born, represents in Greek text. Chiron and Ganymede equals healer and most moral man. okay, that's more like an astrotheological argument, and I like those. I think there's a lot of that going on. Astrotheology, I think, is a big thing. Um, it's the thing about astrotheology. It's hard to know when it's being applied, but the thing is, you know it's being applied, so you kind of got to go. It's like one of those things where when something doesn't make sense in a text, you kind of you pull out astrotheology to make sense of it. So, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that super chat. Appreciate that. What's going on, man?
Hey Neil,
I think. Hey,
my internet is pretty shoddy right now.
that's
But
okay.
if you can hear me, that's good.
I can hear you. Yeah.
I just had one thing to kind of add, and that's more along the lines of when would these Christians, even begin to talk about these things? And I think that it's important to think that these conversations about uh, the Christian resurrection might not even have had relevance in the early following sectarian movement and came about later. Um, you know, can you hear me at all? Hold on. I might
It's getting a little
leave and
fuzzy
then have
now.
me back on. Hold
Yeah,
on.
it's getting a little fuzzy. I was, you were fine at first, but then it got a little worse. Yeah, if you want to jump back in, that's fine. So, but yeah, like you said, I think it's something that you could fall back on it's hard to figure out what the hell does this passage mean? It makes no sense. Why has it got the number 12 and the number 3 and the number 7? I think that's when you go, okay, this must be some astrotheological stuff going on. I definitely am sympathetic to those arguments, definitely, because they're doing it. They're trying to connect the heavens with the earth. They're trying to make the text divinely inspired, the best of their ability. So, all right, Danny's back. Yeah, why don't you just go
Hey, brother,
without?
sorry, I couldn't hear anything. I got cut out. Yeah.
Yeah, you can
So,
just go without camera. It'd probably be better that way.
yeah. Um, so yeah, I think it's important to think about, when these Christians would have even began having these conversations and the elevate, the evolution of the suffering servant into this resurrected uh, person in the first place. The first Jesus movement probably didn't even think the Messiah was a divine figure necessarily, like a God man. So you get this Pauline Christianity, and it seems like Jesus's appearance was at apotheosis. So, when is it that Christians actually start talking about a physical resurrection? And when do they even start celebrating Easter? I think is an
Yes,
important discussion all on its own.
exactly. Because Paul does mention that he appeared to this 500 thing, but he doesn't say in what manner. He doesn't say it's physical. He doesn't say if it's a phantom or if it was a vision. He doesn't. We don't know much. Then the earliest manuscripts of Mark for the first 400 years, there's no manuscripts of Mark for the first 400 years that have the longer ending in it. And
Yeah.
it's funny because Amon Hillman, who everyone thinks is fighting against Christianity, they're like, "How dare you talk about Amon? He's fighting against the church." No, he actually agrees with the He thinks that these scholars that say there's no manuscripts, boo hoo them, because for some reason he wants there to be a longer ending because it mentions venom or something. Like you could see how his methodology is. He just does what he wants. He doesn't care what the evidence says. It's all about what he wants. Anyways, the reason why I'm bringing that up is he's aligned with the Christian apologetics. The apologists are going, the longer ending could have been there. We just don't have any manuscripts of it. Well, I want to see the evidence. And this plays into what you said. If the first version of the gospel, which is Mark, doesn't have a physical resurrection, and all you have is the angel saying he resurrected, well, what is that? So we have to wait till you get to Matthew's gospel. Who knows when that's written? 85, 95 AD. The first time they're ever telling a story about a physical resurrection. That's kind of crazy. That's kind of what you're getting at, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's a evolution. And I think a big part of it is because the original, Jesus movement was in itself a, Israelite nationalist movement. And in order for this movement to be Romanized, in the same way that on every other culture and incorporated into the imperial cult, they had to, incorporate the same mythology that, ancient Israelites and the rest of the pagan world were still celebrating. It's no, the Jews were pretty much wiped out, large populations during the Jewish wars. Like, this was a, go ahead. Yeah.
I think you broke up there, Danny. I can't hear you anymore.
Yeah, I think that ultimately, when it comes down to it, it's like we're looking at, this Herodian mythology that then got popularized much later when the Roman Church saw how effective it was, and it, just continued to follow that Platonic course of trying to figure out what's going on with Christianity.
Yeah, well said. And thanks for jumping on here. And I'm gonna. Is that it? Is that anything else? Is that it?
The only thing else that I would add is just like, like when you're looking at these rising and dying mythologies, I think that the reason why you see a divine couple in almost all of them is because they're realistically talking about the life cycle just as much as the agriculture. The second resurrection is child.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on, brother. Love you guys.
Yeah, man. Thanks for jumping on, man. Good seeing you. Have a good one. And then next we have Greg. What's going on, Greg?
Hey, nice to meet you. I'm a big fan. Very cool.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So I wanted to actually ask what you think about this. So one of the ways I've been trying to understand this a little bit better is not so much that it's made up, but more that you get something like a Romanized version of some of the earlier myths. And I think what that looks like is, when we're tackling like Easter and that framework, kind of like the background with Inanna. So I've spent quite a bit of time trying to understand sort of like the Inanna descents myth. And then there's a weird thing that happens at the end of that story where she gets out of hell and then finds her husband sitting on her throne. His name is Duamiz. And basically what happens is she trades positions with Duamiz. And then Duamiz reaches out to her brother, who's also the sun god. So that Apollo point that you made was really interesting. And then he turns Duamiz into a snake. And then what happens is you get this almost like Persephone dynamic with that figure, where he becomes something like a rising and dying god in the form of a snake. And he spends half of his life in the underworld and the other half.
And if I'm not mistaken, he takes turns with Ningishita.
Yeah.
So 6 months of the year he's underworld, and then when he comes up, Ningishita goes down.
Yeah.
And I brought this up in my Dionysus Apollo video. Let me show you right now. Dionysus Apollo video. Nietzsche. I did a video, Dionysus and Apollo and Nietzsche. And is it on here? Yes. And this is gonna be real quick. And then
Nice.
Trismegistus is next, and I'll let you get your last thoughts on this too. So this video
A
right here.
lament titled "In the Desert by the Early Grass" mentions both deities Ningishita and Demutsi as subjects of mourning. This connection is further reflected
right here. Oh, stupid ad.
Hitting you with an ad.
I jumped right into it though.
Ningishita, whose name means Lord of the Good Tree, has an exact etymology match to what Pherecydes of Syros thinks Dionysus means.
Now I know everyone's going to say, Nisa, what do you mean? That's not Pherecydes or Pherecydes, one of the first pre-Socratics, who was a student of Thales, or no, I think he either taught Thales or was a student of Thales. Or maybe he taught Pythagoras. He's up there. He's in the early 500s AD, BC. I mean, sorry. He said Nisa is wrong. It's not the place Nisa. He said that the name Dionysus comes from a Phoenician word for tree, Nusa.
Hmm.
So this is weird. Like if he's
Yeah.
right, then this all applies.
Interesting.
Diwo Nuso, god of the tree. He was a Mesopotamian deity of vegetation, the underworld, and sometimes war. He was commonly associated with snakes, libations, and wine. Like Dumuzi, he was believed to spend a part of the year in the land of the dead. Dumuzi is also a vegetation god who, like Dionysus, descends into the underworld and returns. Ningishita is connected with Dumuzi due to their common traits as deities of vegetation who undergo death. The god Damu seems to be a synchronization of both Ningishita and Dumuzi. It is commonly believed that Dumuzi was brought to Lebanon and Syria by the Assyrians in the Iron Age and was called Adon and later Adonis. But his connection to Dionysus would predate that evolution. Both Dionysus and Adonis are ritually mourned over in the rites of the Syrians, Phoenicians, and at Delphi, where the mourning of Dionysus took place at the bottom of the mountain of Delphi, where his tomb was located. Initiates in the Eleusinian mysteries practice ritual mourning for Dionysus as well. We also see similar mourning rituals for Osiris, Ashmun, and Attis, all possibly setting the stage for the mourning of Jesus.
And then I think I say one more thing about this.
I mean, it's interesting because
Oddly enough,
it's like there's like a
Pablo.
little cluster right there, eh? And it's like Inanna becomes Ishtar, which becomes Easter, and it's like they're all
Yeah,
kind of nested together.
it's
That's
actually
fascinating.
the thing about that is this. It's actually a weird coincidence because Ishtar is actually a word that comes from a Semitic it's a Semitic root. It comes
Hmm.
from the Akkadians. The oldest version is Inanna.
Yeah.
Ishtar is renamed by the Akkadians, and she just happens to be a dawn goddess, and then Eostre is worshipped all the way in Europe is also a dawn goddess.
Yeah.
So it's weird. You have Ishtar and Eostre. Their names sound similar, and they're both dawn goddesses, but they're different roots etymology wise.
Yeah.
And that this does happen quite a bit more than you would think. The word Deus and Theos, they look like they're from the same root. They're not. They're from two different roots, and they both have to do with divinity.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those weird coincidences. But it's I don't know. Maybe it's by design. Maybe it's not a chance. You know.
I think the thing that I'd heard about it also is that Inanna's star was Venus, and then that eventually gets like you go from Inanna to Ishtar to Ashtar to Aphrodite to Venus, and it's like this weird thread between that one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And they had
Wild.
to say that the eight-pointed star. That's what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I guess the point of this video right here is I show Dumuzi, the way Dumuzi and Ningishita split the time in the underworld.
Yeah.
Is how you find with this calendar. Let me see if I can find it right here.
And ascending, it was traditionally believed that the disappearance of both Ningishita and Dumuzi occurred annually between midsummer and midwinter. What is so interesting about this is a similar duality we see with Dionysus and Apollo.
Watch this.
Attic calendars from the classical age of Athens depict Apollo and Dionysus as lords of the two main seasons. They believe that after harvest, Apollo would leave and go north to the lands of the Hyperboreans and perform his music, which caused the winter aurora borealis. During this time, Dionysus ruled from the underworld and brought merry revelry to the wintertime. Then, during the spring season, Dionysus' death and sacrifice would cause the crops to grow, and Apollo would rule from the heavens, and his light was a blessing for the entire summer until the harvest.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there is like this duality thing going on with these gods, and you find it kind of ubiquitous in all these mythologies where there's these two opposing figures, not necessarily like Satan and God. They're like not even against each other, but they're just opposites in their nature. That's how I would describe the Apollonian Dionysium.
Yeah, that's wild. All right, well, I won't take up your stream anymore. Thanks for having me on. This is real cool.
Thanks for jumping on, man. That was awesome.
Heck yeah.
Seeing you. And we got Triz Majestus. What's going on, man?
Hey, what's up, Neil?
What's going on?
Oh man, been watching you a long time. Huge fan. I want to say you pointed me in a lot of right directions and taught me a lot. But like as y'all were just kind of talking about, these strings go everywhere, man. And it seems like something's happening back then. Also, I had a near death experience. I was in a coma, and I tell you, man, I met God. And you can call me crazy, but there's millions of people out there every day praying to something. And I feel like there's something out there, but we just don't know the name of it. And I've always wanted to ask you, we can always trace these down, but when we finally get to the end, what do you think it is? What do you believe? And that's just a question for you. I'm just wondering.
So I think I don't know. I go back and forth on like what a soul might be or what it is, because I do think there's inspiration. There's some sort of inspiration that people get through mediums like music, film, art, history, and dreams, intoxications, medicine, stuff like that. And I do think there's something, or there's truth to all that. Like Carl Jung gets into this stuff. But I also think we live in a rational world, a rational world that's governed by rational law. And I think there's a possibility that people who are dead are not necessarily in another realm waiting for us to come meet them. That when we die, you actually are, for a time being, gone. But waiting for the end of the cosmos to happen, which would be the end of the entire universe, the last black hole sucks up the last black hole, right? And so that would be the end of all consciousness, all life, all things that can think and use mind. And then once that's over, whatever's after that point is the time where conscious beings are brought back up again in some form or fashion. Whether it's through memory, whether it's through some sort of thing that I can't even fathom, but that's like there's going to be some sort of reawakening at that time. But the time you're dead to the time that happens will feel like a split second. You won't even know you're dead because you can't know you're dead because you'd be alive. So it literally would be trillions and trillions of years would go by, and you would think from the time you literally, your heart stopped and you breathed your last breath to the time that this awakening happens would literally be a blink of an eye. And everyone's going to have that same blink of an eye experience. But people lived 1,000 years ago to 10,000 years ago to thousands of years from now are all going to be waking up at the same time.
I love the way that you explained that. I love the way that you just said that. I've always said that when I was in the coma, the way it felt to me was like I went up there and that I was everything at once, but nothing at the same time. And all of a sudden, I started freaking out, realizing like, oh, I have no fingers, I have no arms, and all of a sudden, it was like everybody understood that I was scared. Everybody understood what feelings I had, and it was really weird how they all were like, we're all connected. We have to all be together and create this great cosmos. And then I relaxed and became connected to everything. And I believe in like what you say, the mysteries. You said rational though. That's where it gets tricky. And when you very first started speaking, you said you go back and forth. I do too. And you live in this rational world, but then you go mix up some acacia, and next thing you know, you're smoking DMT, and you're in the most unrational world you could ever imagine.
Sure.
So I think maybe there might be something going on there with
Yeah,
all
but
these religions.
think about this though. You have to take the DMT to even get there. So there is
Yeah.
a rational process behind it. It is in the mind. So, and I agree with you. I've done DMT multiple times, and I know how intense and how how life changing it is. It's not. This is
Yeah.
not something that people understand unless they try it. It is life changing how insane DMT is. But at the end of the day, it is in the mind. So there is something. The mind is a magical thing. People need to, and I think people need to just
Mhm.
admit that the mind is magical. It really is.
Right.
It's one of the
I
most
heard someone trying to talk about consciousness and sentience being different. So, like, if we when we try to talk about consciousness, consciousness is like the left to right. Your peripheral brain, if you could understand what I'm saying, and your sentience is that forwards and backwards, always watching what's coming. That Homo sapien being coming up from cavemen, being scared of the forest, having to watch your back, and so like we don't understand anything about our brains. And I believe a lot of these gods and stuff were just people trying to put their rationale to that magic, whatever that we have. But yeah, I'm glad I got to talk to you. I wanted to ask you about what you thought about all that. I'll leave
No, I
you with
appreciate
one more. I love diving into symbolism. And so I didn't even realize that the pine cone is also on the Pope's little staff and everything. We're talking about the brain right now. Do you believe the pineal gland has anything to do with all this? Do you believe
no,
that
I
there
don't.
was something going on, like some kind of meditations or something? You get what I mean? Maybe even the plants or something like the soma. Maybe it was a plant that was lost and all these mysteries came up and they were passed down, word to mouth. And by the time
I think you froze
you
there.
know,
Oh, you came
everything
back. Okay, good.
starts getting kind of convoluted.
Yeah, the thing of the pineal gland is like, how much did they?
Don't tell me I lost you.
Yeah, you just broke up for a second. You're back though. You're good. Like how much do they? How much did the ancients know about
Yeah.
the? I mean, you do have like Galen, who is literally like opening up bodies and looking inside and writing down like what's in the brain and all this stuff. So we know ancients are like knowledgeable of like interior, and the pineal gland kind of shape wise looks like a pine cone. Um, and I think that's where the name comes from as well. Pineal gland. I think that's where the name comes from. Um, so maybe I'm not like totally opposed to that idea, but I do know that the pine cone itself represents resurrection and immortality because pine cones year round stay on tree, like they don't like die, pine trees.
Right. Yeah,
So there's a
evergreen.
very clear explanation for that. Can it be more than one can there be more than one reason why the pine cone becomes a sacred symbol? Yeah, it could
Yeah.
have been like the Galen, for example, could have ripped open a human brain and found, look at this, it looks like a pine cone, and then relate that message gets related to the educated class, and next thing you know, there's another reason why the pine cone is sacred. It
Right.
could be so it could be more nuanced than just one thing.
Okay, I'm sorry, my daughter actually called. I need to go talk to her. But
No,
I'm gonna
man,
leave you with this one, man. I would
thanks for
love if
jumping
you
on.
would dive into some of the esoteric ways of the Word of God. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Do you have any videos on that yet? Have you dived into? I haven't seen anything yet.
This probably some quite a bit of stuff like that. So just yeah, flip through my channel, see what's on there.
Yeah, but if you can make one that was about all the names of the words of God and the Kabbalah and all that, I think
Oh,
that
you're talking
that would
about the
be very
72. You're talking
enjoyable.
about the 72 names or whatever.
Right, all the way
Yeah, I
up to the
haven't. Yeah,
Tetragrammaton, all
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that more. That's something I'll keep. I'll think about making something like that maybe. So
I could help you with that with a lot of slides and everything, all the way from the beginning to the end. If you need help, if you could give me an email, I could
yeah,
shoot
my
you.
email's on my channel, so send me an email.
Sounds great, man. Take
Thanks, man.
care.
Have a good one. And then we got Vesper, real quick. Vesper, I'm gonna read a couple super chats if you don't mind. Uh,
Hello,
Gatus,
hello.
hey Vesper,
Oh no,
Gatus
not
Abramovich.
again.
What happened?
I've got no audio.
Oh, you can't hear me? I can hear you.
Let me try rejoining.
Okay, I can hear you. Just so you know, we'll try. We'll see what happens. Signal plus radio equals broadcast. If you smash the radio, no broadcast. But signal is still there. Signal equals soul. No signal in the radio, it's everywhere and nowhere. Interesting. That's very interesting. A nice little way to look at the soul, I guess, you know? Oh, I skipped one, I just realized. Gaddis about same person. Some more cool oh, you know, I read this one. Okay, sorry about that. But yeah, thank you for that super chat. Yeah, it's very fascinating. I think that's an interesting way to look at the soul, what a soul is. I mean, there are some people who say there's no evidence for soul, but like it is kind of a mind-bending truth that like matter, like our bodies are just made of matter. And it's like there's a certain way matter can form together where consciousness can come out of it. Like it's, you know, cells and DNA and RNA. And I know there's like this huge complicated thing going on, but it's still shockingly mind-blowing that it all works. It really, I think so. And then you look at like other life forms that aren't as sentient as us, and it makes you go, like we're lucky that we have this level of intellect. You know what I mean? Yeah. Anyways, thank you for that super chat. Bakken Pan Dionysus has been a member for 19 months. Damn. Look at that. We are one psyche that exists in multiplicity, just as the dreamer dreams of beings, not the dreamer in the dream, but the dream beings are all of one. Wow. Now that's some monism right there. I appreciate that. 19 months. That's a long time. Thank you very much. Seriously. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate that. And I'm going to try to do as many more of these streams. Try to get on here a couple times a week at least. Appreciate that. Thank you. All right, Vesper, are we working now?
Hope so.
Can you hear me?
So far, so good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, yeah, I can hear you too, so we're good.
Nice. Boy, have I got a perspective to share with you.
Sure. Let's see what you got.
It's going to be kind of difficult to unpack, but basically, I think it has a lot. This stuff with Easter has a lot to do with the Essenes. That it goes back to them, to a prophecy where actually Elijah is thought to have started the Essenes on Mount Carmel.
Makes sense.
And
outside of the temple got figure makes a little, yeah, I get it, makes sense.
Yeah, there's some vision, I guess, that on Mary's side, 7 generations back, that they had that led to Jesus essentially. So Jesus is like the 8th generation. Back to this symbolism of the 8, right?
Yeah. Eight.
And apparently Pythagoras visited Mount Carmel at one point. So he visited with the Essenes. There's a legend about that.
Where was that from?
I'm not sure. You have to look that one up. That he spent like a month with them or so.
Really? I never.
Yeah. So I think this number 8 thing has to do with the egg. With like a
Iamblichus wrote in his biography. Let's see. Maybe I can pull it up. But keep going. Go ahead. Keep going.
Let's see. So I think there's some tie-in with numerology, with sacred geometry, with music theory, like the 8 is the new octave, right? The beginning of a new octave. And in sacred geometry, the 8th sphere forms the egg of life. So there's some weird stuff like that going on. Very esoteric take, you know. There's also this idea that there was a different Bethlehem, a Bethlehem that was at the foot of the Mount Carmel, called the Galilean Bethlehem. So, like Jesus being born in a cave at the foot of Mount Carmel.
This is interesting. Iamblichus, and I was talking to John Dillon about this, how the Platonists rewrote Moses into Mocus, a different character. And this is so funny because Iamblichus writes in Phoenicia, talking about Pythagoras. Pythagoras conversed with the prophets who were descendants of Mocus, the physiologist, and with others, and they were also with Phoenician hierophants. But after he had stayed there for some months, he passed over to Mount Carmel, and it says, but which they knew to be more sacred than other mountains, and quite inaccessible to the vulgar, where he passed much of his time in solitary meditation in the temples. He lived there for a while, leading a life of great simplicity, avoiding the miasma of the common people. He did not allow himself to be seen by the many, until at last he saw a ship from Egypt sailing past the shore. He went down the mountain and asked the sailors to take him. Now, this is interesting. This is like so Iamblichus is like what, 425 or 325? Let me see. Let me look it up. Iamblichus. So he is 240. Yeah, he's okay. 325. So kind of late. Not that late though. But anyways, he's rewriting the Herodotus story, like the older version of Pythagoras' story that you get from, like, let's see, Herodotus would be like 700 years before Iamblichus. Herodotus says Pythagoras traveled to Babylon and Egypt, and then set up shop in Italy after leaving. Never went back to Greece. But it's funny because Iamblichus is like retelling this story, but instead of going to Babylon, he's going to Israel, which shows you with the 4th century is a whole different world now. Babylon is not the big player anymore. It's Israel now. You know what I mean? So
yeah. There's even more to it though. The Ogdoad in Christian numerology could be a reference back to like the Egyptian Ogdoad, where these 8 gods are said to have interacted to produce the cosmic egg from which Ra was born.
Yeah, I think so. You also have the 8 Curetes and the dactyli. Like it's always it's usually 7, and then there's like an 8th, a newborn after, like a final 8. So usually 7 traditional Curetes, or the Corybantes or whatever, the Caviroi. There's always 7, and then there's like one more, and that's what happens with David. David has 7 brothers, and then David's born. And then
so this symbolizes like a new beginning, a new cycle.
Yeah, like you have your sacred 7, and then there's like the final, like it's like 7 and 8. Like it's something that pops up a lot.
So the other thing is, I believe Epiphanius, when he says that Nazarenes split off from the Essenes, essentially, but that these Nazarenes, I think, were the Nazarene high priests in Mandaism. So I think there's a connection to Mandaism there, and there's some scholars that talk about this.
Well, that's what the Gospels are saying. I mean, it's not using the word Mandaeans, but it's saying that Jesus is coming out of the sect of John the Baptist. It's literally saying he gets baptized by John the Baptist.
Right.
If the Mandaeans are the sect of John the Baptist, then the Nazarenes came from the Mandaeans. That would just follow.
I think there's some sort of historical connection there. I don't know if it's exactly, it looks exactly the same as it does today, but there's something to look into there for sure.
That would also make them Gnostics too, because manda means knowledge or gnosis.
Right. And in that, the Uthras, if Jesus was originally understood to be an Uthra and a being of light from the world of light, then they emerge from an egg-like structure as well. So there's something like that going on. Uthras emerge from luminous egg-like forms is part of
Yeah.
the symbolic language describing creation and divine emanation. So this stuff
Yeah.
goes really super deep.
No, I mean I'm glad you came on and added that stuff to the conversation, man.
I don't think that
Appreciate it.
perspective has ever been told or heard before.
No, I don't think so. I think that was it's an interesting way to look at it. I mean, especially with the whole Pythagoras thing. Um, what I think, do I think he visited Mount Carmel? Probably not, but you never know.
We do have Pythagorean like influence in Christianity, like
Yeah. Oh yeah.
with the 153 fish, you know.
Yeah. I think it comes through Alexandria. That's what I think.
Hmm.
So, but anyways, I don't know. This is definitely
Something to think about for sure, right?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for jumping out, man.
All right.
Anything else?
Other than that, I think the Greek stuff, like influence, probably comes later to give it like a more of a pedigree among Hellenistic Jews and Gentiles and stuff. I don't know if it's early or not, but Mandaism also has Egyptian influence in it, like Ptah Hill being Ptah, right, from Egyptian mythology. So there's something. It goes back. I think the scholarship on it has been held up because people thought it only originated in the 2nd century, but there's thought that it's either 1st or 3 centuries prior now. You know.
Well, Ptah. Oh my God! Someone's trying to do a porn ban. I'm banning them. Someone on the bottom is trying to do it. What do they call it? A porn bomb? We try to get someone. It's a Christian. It's Christians. They're trying to get me banned.
Oh wow.
So I'm gonna do. They're getting banned. Okay, that person. Did you see him in the bottom? You can see.
No, I'm not watching the stream right now.
That was crazy. That's what they do. If they don't like what you're saying and you're saying stuff that's gonna hurt people from leaving the church or going to leave the church, they will send people to try to get you banned. But anyways, thanks for jumping on, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Nice talking to you.
Good. Nice talking to you, man. Nick Roku, what's going on? I'm just going to read one more super chat real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
The mother effing Wendy Berg has been a member for 9 months. Holy shit. Where's time going? That is crazy. It's already been 9 months. Well, appreciate that and good to see you. It's a long time no see. How you been? So, Nick Roku, how you doing, man?
What's up? I'm doing fine. And you?
Good, good.
Can you hear me well?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. When I started watching your stream, you talk more about Pesach than Easter. And that's funny, but I agree with with the comparisons. It is what the Hebrews did, or the writers. They did adapt like ancient Eastern rituals, and just also tossed up multiple ones into one. This is the one, I wrote my bachelor thesis on Yom Kippur and its origin, and it's the same. There are known Hittite or Syrian rituals to ward off evil, where they send goats into the desert, or sometimes multiple animals. And it's so similar when you're thinking like this can't be a coincidence. Yeah, also the point that you made, would God, it is literally from God, why would God copy some ancient Near Eastern quote unquote pagan ritual?
Yeah. And look at speaking of the Hittites, they last all the way up until 800 BC. I mean, they survived the Bronze Age collapse, and they shriveled. Look how small they are. They're like that it reminds me of the late Byzantine Empire, where it's just kind of hanging on by a thread. But look where they're located. They're right there, right next to Israel, and you can see there's tons of borrowing from Hittite culture into the Israelite culture. So I wouldn't be surprised if Yom Kippur was just like a Hittite ritual that was adopted by the Israelites. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. Well, for me, it isn't surprising. It's just way too obvious. And of course, there were also then ruled by Aramaic-speaking people who were also from these parts. So it's way too obvious. Also, you know, the what you got in Elephantine with the quote unquote Passover papyri, where you know, okay, they're still learning the stuff, and yeah. So then the question is Easter quote unquote pagan? I mean, if Pesach was already pagan, then this one is just a further adaptation of what already was. But I don't know, you know, if Jesus died on Passover, you know, for me the cleansing of the temple is maybe one of the things I can, well, one of the things where I'm pretty sure, okay, this has to be historical, or else you can't explain the crucifixion of Jesus. And it would make more sense for it to happen on a high holiday than on some, you know, random day.
Wait, why do you think that? You think it would make more sense that it'd be on a holiday?
Yeah, because of the commotion that it caused.
But do you think it caused? How do you know it caused commotion?
Well, there's some. Well, he must have done something to get himself killed, or you know, to get And I think
I'm fine with that. But why would it be on? How do you know it would be on a holiday? You know what I mean?
Well,
this is not. I'm not even trying to be like this is one
no,
of the things that
I
people
agree
just,
with you, but but I
just
think
kind of accept this, and I feel like it's not critically examined enough.
Yeah.
The idea that we just accept it was Passover, and everyone just goes, yeah, it had to have been. And it's one of those things that I'm wondering, why does it have to be Passover? Because the Gospels say so. Paul doesn't say
no. Yeah, of course, that's where I agree with you. But I think if Jesus was also one of these guys who imitated the prophets, you know, like the ones who Josephus mentions, then symbolically, I think, okay, he was trying to do something to get God acting in some kind of way. You know, like God acting for the Israelites or for Jews in this case.
Yeah, I've actually heard from some. I forgot who it was talking to. It was a biblical scholar who couldn't find any evidence that Israelites or Romans even would do crucifixion during a festival. The evidence was they would keep them jailed until the festival was over and then do it, because and this makes sense. Why would you want to kill? People just watch someone die. They're gonna go cheer and have a party. No, that's gonna like kill the mood. Like, that's gonna suck. You would wait till after. So it is kind of odd that they place it right before the Passover. You know what I mean? Like,
well, the chronology is also unclear, you know, because the synoptics have a different chronology than John. So you know, there is already discrepancy. I don't even know what the Gnostic, quote unquote Gnostic gospels, what's their timeline. And so I do think the commotion must have been maybe on Passover, but maybe the crucifixion was after that. It's also possible.
Yeah.
But the thing is with the historical Jesus, it's like you can make so many arguments for some kind of Jesus where it's like, okay, we basically know what the text is saying literally doesn't add up because there are too many contradictions.
Yeah.
And whatever else, what the other theories that we have are also like built on these verses and you know, reading between the lines and a bit of historical context. But it's you know, we didn't arrive at a you know, conclusion, at a definitive one.
Yeah. Did you say you wrote a paper on
Yom Kippur? That was my bachelor thesis.
What was the ritual that you found that was like Yom Kippur? Do you remember?
Okay, yeah, let me look it up real quick.
Yeah, I'd love to know that so I can cover it on my channel. I'll even cite you for it too.
No worries. Like, I wrote in German, but I cited. Give me a second.
Yeah, no, take your time.
The origins are here. And so it's like a scapegoat ritual, and they found some findings in the city of Ebla in Syria.
That's right. Yeah, that's right where the Neo-Hittites were. Yeah, that's what I was just talking about.
And I'm citing a German scholar, Janowski, and Jan Bremer. I think you know Bremer. He gets cited a lot in also in English literature. That one, and what else? There was like this inscription and another one where they sent multiple animals into the desert. But if you want, I can email you my bachelor thesis.
Yeah.
I'll translate it via AI. Send you
I
all
would love to see
the
it. I would love to see it. That'd be all. I'll do a video on it too, maybe. But yeah, Ebla right here. It was right in that Neo-Hittite Empire.
Yeah.
And I think there's like they found like a whole library there or something like called the Ebla Archives, right? Ebla tablets.
Yeah, exactly these ones. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we know a lot about. We got tons of data from this site. But yeah, I've touched on the Ebla tablets on a lot of my videos. But yeah, I would like to know what this, because I think that's what most of the Hebrew Bible is. It's just reapplying cultural norms that's going on in that time period. So
Well, and that's also, I'm more sold on the final quote unquote redaction of the Bible being in a Hellenistic era. But these things, like there's this ancient Near Eastern tradition with maybe some native Israelite stuff going on, and then gets rewritten over and over and over again.
That's one of the things people misconceive about me is they think that I'm saying like Amon Hillman, that it's all like invented in the 3rd century. It's nonsense. There's a tradition. There's clearly traditions that go back farther. You can,
of course,
it's in the text. You have to be an idiot not to see it. But I'm saying the final form that we're seeing it now is totally redacted and fixed to please the Hellenistic audience of the time period. It's so obvious. It's very
but of course, but it's like it's so obvious. Like we know the Israelites have been around for longer. Like they must have had some form of culture, native one. So it's obvious. But yeah, with what Jonathan Adler and Gad Barnea found out, I mean, it's pretty conclusive. And I also was on Derek's stream, and there is this other scholar that God knows, and also Jonathan Adler. He wrote a book also on this and more about the Maccabean wars. And it's just it's only in German, but it's the English title would be Paternal Laws and the Laws of Moses by Reinhard Gregor Kratz. And he goes into this. He also, writes about the book of Daniel and how that is linked to all of this, and that they in that book use like known, how is it called, literature, like tropes. There's this in the book of Daniel. They blame who was it again? They blame was it the Babylonian king? I forgot his name. Who is it?
And Daniel?
Yeah, and Daniel, in the book of Daniel.
Yeah, the Babylonian king, yeah.
Yeah, they blame him for what? Oh, no, it was the prophecy. I'm not sure. It has been quite a while.
You're talking about the Mini Tekel thing?
No, the one where they blame it's a prophecy. Well, not a real one, but where they say that the later ruler will abolish the sacrifices at the temples.
Oh yeah.
And
you're talking about Antiochus the Fourth. It's a prophecy about Antiochus, right? You there? Did you break up? You there?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You broke up for a second. You there? I think I lost you. Well, thanks for jumping on, man. Appreciate that. Maybe you can. Maybe next time. Catch you next time. Appreciate that, man. I'm gonna close up soon. We got Danny's back. We got 2 people who jumped back on, but let's. Since no one else is here, why not? Danny, what's going on, man?
Hey, brother.
You there? Hey, what's going on?
Hey, can you hear me? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I can hear.
So I think another Easter being related in the Bible, if you want to go back to the ancient Israelite culture, would be the Heroes Gamos, the celebration of the king and the queen getting married. the queen anoints the king, selecting him for being appointed divinely, and then he conquests her in the bedroom in a public manner. And that yearly festival was a kind of like a reappointing of Yahweh as divine ruler over the land through the kings. And in Song of Songs is pretty much the hero gamos of the Old Testament.
Oh yeah, 100%. There's a lot of Babylonian, Assyrian, and Akkadian myths that are just like Song of Songs, where it's like a sexual union between a goddess and a god. And this took place at the Akitu festival in this week right now, the week we're in right now. They would take a statue of Ishtar. Sometimes she would have a different name too. There was different names for Ishtar. There's different goddesses that look like Ishtar. They had the same star, the same lions, but have a different name. And whatever. The point is, it was the goddess Ishtar, and they would take the statue and they would take it in procession all the way from Nineveh to Babylon, and they would go and meet up with the statue at Marduk, or in a different time period, Dumuzi. But I'm talking later on, it'd be Marduk, and they would have like a sacred marriage festival for the new year.
Yeah, and I think another thing too, like the reason why the goddess seems to be a lot more easily translatable, from culture to culture, is because men are more egotistical and they want their own name to be promoted, whereas the goddess was more representative of her fertility, her blessing, her medicine, and so you even see in the the way that gods translate from culture to culture, how each culture views each sex through that lens. And Yahweh calls her the whore because she's so easily identifiable as the same woman across every religion.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
So, anyways, brother, I love you. Have a good night. Thanks for this awesome. Yeah, you're great. Keep at it.
Have a good one. See you. And then we got one more, I think, for the night. And then Trismegistus. What's going on? I think you're back for a second time, right? If I'm not mistaken. Were you just on? You there? I don't think you can hear me. You there?
I can't hear you, Neil.
You can't hear me?
Let me see if I can get some better service.
All right. And then I think, Nico, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, my internet played a prank on me. Anyways, I was talking about this book, Paternal Laws and the Laws of Moses. And, the book of Daniel, this trope that the king will abolish the sacrifices. And he argues that this trope is actually already known by other polemic literature. That was what I wanted to say. Anyways, where can I email you, or do you want me to send this to you via Discord?
Well, the email that I have that's attached to my my channel. Let me just hold on. Let me look it up. I'll look it up right now. It is. Do you have a pen or a pencil, or are you typing this up, or do you want to?
I'm gonna type this.
So it's
on the notepad.
It's NEAL.
Yep, Neil.
SEND.
SEND.
LAK.
Okay. Yep.
At gmail.com. Very easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh wow, you got lucky getting such an email.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
then I'll email you my bachelor thesis and this book by Reinhard Gregor Kratz, but just the pictures. And maybe you can invite him. Of course, he also knows German, English, and maybe Gad or Jonathan can put you in contact with him.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so. Right before I gave you the email, you said something about the writers in the what was it? The contemporary writers knew about it.
The writers of the Book of Daniels that used this trope.
Okay.
That the king will abolish the sacrifices. This is a particular polemic trope that was already known in other quote unquote pagan literature.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense. Why? If all these rulers that ruled what is today Israel and Palestine, they made always a deal with these cultic sites, also temples, that they get a bit of the money from the temple for their own quote unquote state. And why would they abolish such things? It would they wouldn't get any money anymore.
Right. Yeah. And then, or unless there was some plan to usurp that system, it's a new one. That's kind of.
I don't know. It was already centralized, so the king and his people did profit from it.
Yeah. I wonder if because the Hittites, I wonder if that you can look at the Hittites as the medium, because so much of this stuff we want to know if it came from the Greeks or if it came from the Near East, but like the Hittites are like the gray area in between both, because they're Indo-Europeans,
Yeah.
but they're located just enough in there. I mean, they're in the continent of Asia technically. They're in Turkey.
No.
So like they're in that Near Eastern world. They're using cuneiform writing. They adopt a lot of the Babylonian stuff, but they're also Indo-Europeans, and they're also heavily influencing the Ionians and the Lydians and the Trojans, who in turn, bring it to the Greeks. So I think the Hittites are something I need to look into more. That's what I'm basically getting at. I think that's gonna be my next frontier, is to do a lot of research into the Hittites. Start knowing more about the Hittites.
Well, that's interesting stuff. They, of course, were a major power back then, and they also had a lot of wars against Egypt. And
yes,
yeah,
Armageddon is based on the Hittites versus the
Yeah.
Egyptians.
Exactly.
We think Armageddon's the end of the world. Armageddon literally happened. It was a war between the Hittites and the Egyptians. They fought in Israel, or Syria, Israel. That was the battleground. I actually went to the place where the battle happened, the field, Megiddo, Tel Megiddo. I was on Tel Megiddo, and that's where Josiah got pierced and killed, King Josiah. So you can see why it's such a central thing, why it's being reapplied to Armageddon, and it's like the war is going to happen again. Like that's what they think,
But that's the thing. Like these texts or the myths. Sometimes I'm a bit split on the myths in general. Like, are they meant to be literal to for some as a noble lie to get the people follow a religion so that you can control them easier, or are they like symbolic in a sense? Something happened. The myth of Athena being born out of the head of Zeus. This is something for me where I'm like, okay, this has to be a symbol. It's a symbol. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Or was it Kronos eating his own children, or was it Saturn? Yeah. Also, it's like,
both.
Yeah. Where I'm like, okay, this is obviously meant to be understood symbolically. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. But then there are also myths where I'm like, this seems to be like, trying to it's a noble lie, from Plato's laws. That's what I think the Pentateuch is for also.
Oh, yeah. There's tons of scholarship on Plato's laws being like heavily borrowed from in the Torah.
Yeah, I know.
There's like 75% overlap between Plato's laws and Torah law. That's a crazy amount. It's a crazy amount.
Yeah, but where I'm a bit conflicted, because for me it seems to be it's a mix, because on the one hand I think the Pentateuch and these Mosaic laws are like was their key to somehow preserve Jewish culture, quote unquote, the one that they liked, and so they created this portable culture that they can live wherever. They don't need the land anymore. And this already happened after with the exile, the first one. And so there seems to be, for me, this idea, okay, it seems to make sense. Okay, this is post first exile, post Babylonian exile, where these ideas come up.
Yeah.
And then the Hellenistic stuff must have been added later with Plato's laws, but it sometimes does both.
They both have a division of 12 tribes or 12 families or whatever. They both have a creation myth where a single god creates an image of himself.
Yeah.
There's a world soul or Adam. They both have a paradise that's lost where everything was perfect and then something happened and then now everything's not perfect. They both have and then that's like the whole like metaphysics stuff.
Yeah.
But then you get into like the codes. That I know Hammurabi gets cited as reason why this must be older. Well, Plato has similar lex talionis, what you find in Latin. It's a Latin word, but
Yeah.
it's borrowing from Plato. It's like a Mediterranean version of the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. The Greeks had that idea, the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. They lived like that, and so you find that in Etruscan law too. You also find the elder councils who guard the law. You find, and then that's like me getting into the meta aspects. But then you start getting into like the neighbors versus their neighbor stuff, and then
Yeah.
you see Plato's laws are lining up, like the mundane laws line up. So you have the sacred laws lining up, the mundane laws are lining up. There's a lot of it lining up. So.
That's why for me the redaction makes more sense. Like, okay, there was this maybe idea after the Babylonian exile, and then it was expanded with Platonic parallels. On the metaphysics, though, I do see like there are too many conflicts because within a polytheistic framework which the Platonic metaphysics operates on, it's okay to have a demiurge. And that isn't, the demiurge is not the perfect.
Philo even says that
Yeah.
the daimons or the gods, in the polytheistic sense, are the angels of Judaism. So Judaism is polytheistic. They just don't say they are.
Yeah, but that's not the problem. The problem is Yahweh or being the demiurge, because they then later want to make him into the one, but the one has to be absolutely simple, and Yahweh is not absolutely simple. So this is where it conflicts.
No, you're right, and this is why it looks like there's. So this is a great point, but you can find Platonists in the old academy who don't necessarily have the same metaphysics as Plato.
Yeah, of course.
That to me, because I used to kind of, when I heard Gamerkin make these arguments, I would go, but Yahweh isn't the one. Like, how can this be? And then I started reading other Platonists from the old academy who have these weird ideas about like Zeus and stuff like that. So like you can be totally going through Plato and not adopting everything from Plato.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're right though. I think you're right to point out those nuances though, for sure. It even says Plato even says he can't be jealous. And then what does Yahweh say? I'm a jealous God. So there's tons of contradictions, obviously.
Yeah, but that's of course, but that's because the Bible has incorporated like Bronze Age, let's call it like divine prophets, where like these gods were men in some other plane of existence, and of course that's why it conflicts. But also when it was a couple of weeks ago, you argued that Genesis 1 and 2 read through Philo makes sense. But you know what the problem is, because I wrote my master thesis on this. If you take the Genesis 1 account where God in this interpretation of Philo creates the idea of man, this works. But there's one problem. He says that's funny. If you read Philo, he says the Genesis 1 mentions these helpers. And Philo obviously takes this from the Timaeus, where the demiurge creates with the help of the young gods. And he even himself says, we don't know what they are, but they help God. And now that's the problem here, because in the account of the Timaeus, the demiurge creates the immaterial part, and the helpers, the young gods, they create the material part. But in Genesis 1, the whole account via Philo's interpretation happens in the realm of forms. But that would mean that the helpers, who are then blamed also in Philo's interpretation, are blamed for the bad parts of the man. They're blamed for why man is evil. Yeah. That it doesn't make sense, because that would mean that the idea of man is metaphysically infested by evil, which will never work in Platonism. And then he has this in Genesis 2, he has God making the body of man, and that's where this conflicts, because either who created the bad parts, the other angels or gods in this case in Genesis 1, or how does that relate to the physical body that then God creates? Because where do you blame the evil aspect of man? And that's in Timaeus that isn't a problem.
No.
But in Philo's interpretation, it is.
Yeah, it's interesting. Anyways, I'm at 3 hours.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, man.
No, thanks for joining, and I appreciate it. And I'm gonna this has been fun. Definitely jump on next time I do this. So.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me, and thank you for everything you do. You're a great inspiration.
Appreciate that. Really do appreciate that. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Have a good one. And I got one more super chat. Or no, two more super chats. So Gaddis Abramovics, thank you for the 2. Demiurge equals logos equals phi. 1 is to phi as phi is to the 1. Are you talking about the golden ratio? Phi? Yeah, that makes sense. If that's what you're talking about, like the creative fingerprint in the cosmos. That's interesting. Never thought about that. That's a really good way to put it. I like that. And then we have Bakken, Pan, Dionysus in the house again. I appreciate all the help, all the support. In Heroes Gamos, royal couple represent God and goddess. Absolutely. The Heroes Gamos, the royal marriage, the sacred marriage, I should say. That's definitely represented with the god and goddess. And then you can see this with Demeter and Iacchus and the Eleusinian mysteries. It's like a secret marriage. It's like it's Demeter and Iasios, and they give birth to Iacchus. Sacred marriage, and that's through the initiation. So that's why there's no myths about it. But anyways, I'm out of here, and like I always say, you have just attained true gnosis.
You have just attained true gnosis.